Hello, hey, what's up? And welcome back to the movie discussion pocket dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, and that's Jay, and we're back for probably in the first time in forever, like doing consecutive weeks. I can't remember probably the last time we actually got 2 weeks in a row, so this feels good.
We're
We gotta,
productive.
we're super productive now, two in a row for the first time in like 9 months or something stupid like that. But no, it'll be better going forward, I'm sure.
We're trying.
Yeah, we're trying to get a little ahead to figure out what next week is going to be too. It's exciting. But anyway, this was not done with Christmas in mind, but it's December 6th. It's the Christmas season. So here's a Christmassy movie. Most people don't even remember that Brazil does take place during the Christmas season, and it does show up a little bit in the movie. Although, of course, it's not a Christmas movie. And people love to argue about movies that take place at Christmas, whether or not they're Christmas movies. No, Brazil is not a Christmas movie, but people are like Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I don't know. Every year, in fact, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to see it all over Twitter again. People going, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Discussion over. Like, I don't care. Like, it really upsets some people to have it not be a Christmas movie. I mean, I watch Die Hard at Christmas, so sure, why not? I mean, I don't know. I don't think Brazil's a Christmas movie, but it was just sort of coincidence that this movie that we talked about doing for a long time in coming, a few years, that just I just kind of even just remembered, even though it's a movie I've seen a lot and remember. I mean, like I said, that's why you don't think it was a Christmas movie. Like even somebody who's seen it so many times, just kind of forgot for a little while. Oh yeah,
let's touch back on that later. I'd like to discuss that a little bit.
The what makes a Christmas movie? Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Oh, I forgot one thing. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Just a
Tis the season, so why not? Everyone loves to point out the Die Hard's not a Christmas movie. I think it is, but I mean, really, who are you to fucking argue? It's on Christmas. Oh, I cursed. Shouldn't do that. Can't curse in the first 10 minutes on YouTube. They don't like it.
I don't know. I always thought it was the Die Hard is a Christmas movie side that was the more fervent. Like it seemed to really matter to them. Like they got offended. People are like, I don't really think Die Hard's a Christmas movie. They're like, yes, it is. Fuck yeah. Like I don't think it really.
Die
matters,
Hard is like one of the movies I watch every year on Christmas. Like
it is. It is for me too. So I mean, I associate it with Christmas for sure. Because yeah, it's like a Christmas action movie. Now, is this a Christmas fantasy movie? Not really.
Fantasy sci-fi.
Sci-fi, however you want to.
It pretty much hits all the bases, honestly.
I know. So a few things to address here. One is, yeah, we're just coming off Metropolis. So this movie has some similarities to that. And it's like, well, if you stuck around and watched our show for a while, see, like, that's something we like to do because we've done Metropolis. Now we're doing Brazil. We did Dark City. We did Alphaville. Yeah, so we like movies set in
monkeys.
Yeah, we like movies set in like quasi either definitely sci-fi or fantastical cities, things like that all come from the great fountain of the original Metropolis, the Fritz Lang movie, which we talked about a little bit when we did the anime of the same name, which is not directly related. It's kind of like how this movie is like heavily based kind of on 1984, the novel by George Orwell, but it's its own thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same thing you've got going here. So yeah, so there's different ways of classifying what you would call Brazil and what its sort of visual aesthetic is and things like that. Some people will call it diesel punk, which is the thing that comes technologically after steampunk. You've heard it be called a sort of retro, which we'll talk more about too. Because really, the movie is, if you see the very beginning, it is not set in the future. It's not that. It says somewhere in the 20th century is what it opens with. So the idea is really, it's more like it's an alternate timeline, 20th century, where technology kind of stacked upon itself, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s thing. It's an amalgamation. It's all things sort of mixed together, which creates its own look and everything. It also does keep the movie from feeling dated, because I think one thing that Terry Gilliam was aware of was if you were looking at any movie, any movie before this and even after that's like supposed to be set in the future, the sci-fi, like they never really wind up looking like that. They always dated themselves. You know, you look at a 50s sci-fi movie, it doesn't look like the future. It just looks like what the 50s thought the future would be and so forth. And we talked about this before. And I mentioned it too in Metropolis, keeping that retro aesthetic based on the comic, which came out in 1949. You know, it's imagine this futuristic kind of city with advanced computers and robots running around, and yet they're still using paper and things like that. I've been reading this was, I will say, one of the only good things about the very disappointing, what's it called, adaptation of Foundation on Apple TV, like don't watch it, it sucks, is that it was an excuse for those books to get nice shiny re-releases. So yeah, I don't really like the Apple TV Plus logo that's on all of them.
That's dumb.
But it was a good chance to get, you know, shiny new copies of this series, which I never owned myself. I read the series as a teenager, and they were my sister's books. And even when I was a teen, many years ago, the books we had were old. They were like at least from like probably the 80s. Yeah. So this was a good excuse to start getting the new books. But anyway, one of the things that's funny, of course, the first book came out in 1952. So it's sort of the same deal. You have like Isaac Asimov writing about something that's thousands of years in the future. It's like 11,000 years in the future. And there's, you know, space travel and cities of the future and stuff. But there's still paper and, I don't know, people smoking cigars and things like that. It's probably gone. Probably the funniest detail I forgot, though, is like, okay, I don't want to talk too much about Foundation or the plot of Foundation, but at the very start, when Harry Seldon is still alive and he's been arrested, he's telling the Empire officials, you know, what sort of his plan is and how he has all these people working under him. They're like, yeah, we got spies on you. We know you have 120,000 people, or like 100,000 people like that, right? And he goes, well, I think you're counting women and children. So right off, he's pointing out that like all these years in the future, not a single one of his workers working on the Foundation is a woman. Like that's really their 50 stuff. Like even then, like women aren't scientists, women aren't mathematicians, women aren't psychologists, or any of the things that he deals with. It's just the men and their wives and children, and they're just baggage. Like they don't count, which is fucking hilarious. Because yeah, at least early in the series, there's like 0 female characters. Like the first female character you come across in the original book is just some guy's wife who like yells at him for a while, and that's all she does in the book. She doesn't have any fucking role or anything like that. So I just thought that was funny. Isaac Asimov, the futurist who can look years ahead in the future and how society will change and evolve. Well, women, you know, they're still just off to the side, not doing much while the men take care of business. I just thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it is. It is really bizarre to think like how different things could be in a relatively short period of time. You know, you think 50s to, 70s, 80s, not a huge time jump, but as far as that kind of stuff goes, you know,
social, the end of the 60s and into the 70s, the civil rights movement and women's movement and all those things. Yeah,
like smoking cigarettes now is like saying the N-word in public. Like it's almost. It's really, you know, you don't see it anymore. Really,
you don't see it. I see it in real life. I live in Halifax. It's still. A ton of people smoke here, I have to say. The rest of Canada, maybe smoking's gone down. Not here. And probably not Quebec either, because they're all French. So they all smoke. But tons of people smoke here. But it's definitely disappeared from like media and stuff. Like, can you imagine like having a movie where you have a good guy who's like a hero who also smokes? Like, they'd be like, that's terrible.
Yeah. He's promoting cancer.
What's funny about that is like the only exception I've seen to that is South Korea. If you watch Korean movies, main characters still smoke, like good guy characters, not just like bad guys or side characters. I watched a romantic comedy not too long ago, and the thing was, she had actually quit smoking. Her thing was that she had quit, but she was having trouble. She was getting stressed, so she was smoking again. I was like, they won't even do that in a movie now. Like, suggest that somebody used to smoke. Not if they're like, again, like the romantic lead or whatever. Like a bad guy can smoke because they're bad. But you know, you can't have the hero or who you're supposed to be rooting for or siding with be a smoker.
In the 90s, virtually every person I knew smoked. You know,
I was definitely an exception among like my age group. It was funny too because I can remember in being in elementary. and it being like hit aggressively by like PSAs and even people coming to like talk about like being anti-smoke. And I was like, yeah, of course, I'm not going to smoke. And then within like 2 or 3 years, like more than half my peers smoked.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's not because the PSAs made any impact on me. It had never been anything I wanted to do in the first place. Although I think I told Jay this before. Like I used to like hang out with people that smoked all the time, and I kind of wanted to like prove a point that I was cool with it because I would like stand outside with them when they smoked. And I became the opposite of that when I got older. I was like, what am I doing? Where I would like actively avoid people smoking because I didn't want to be around a bunch of secondhand smoke. Because of course, why would you? But I was like my teens and stuff. Like I wasn't willing to actually smoke, but I was willing to show people that I was cool with it. And then in my early 20s, I had a very brief period, less than a year, where I smoked, but that was brought on by weird circumstances. And when I quit, and that was kind of it. But I know, Jay, you actually smoked for years, so quite different there. But no, Halifax is still a very smoky city, I would say.
Well, I mean, just the prices alone, at least
prices are insane.
back, yeah. Because I think Australia, they're what, $50 a pack?
Okay, we're not up to that, but we're like maybe $15 a pack.
They're doing some wild stuff over there. But, whatever gets it done,
I mean, I think it is probably true there's less younger people smoking now here, but the old guard is still around. Like, I haven't been to a hockey game here in a couple of years, but I mean, how it always was like if you go to a hockey game, like a Mooseheads game, like if you, in between periods, you can show your ticket or whatever, so that you can actually go outside and come back in. And like always in between periods, like within about 10 feet of the building, there'd be like hundreds of people outside, just this massive wall of people smoking. It was actually pretty disgusting because it was just so many.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe there's less of that now. I don't know, but that's how my experience. Like I wouldn't even go outside, but you could even just look outside and see them all out there.
Well, they'll give you like a paddock. Like they'll put everybody in this like paddock, like in the worst place in the event, and that's where you smoke.
But smokers are dedicated, and that's one thing about living. I mean, a place that's decently cold. Like we still have cold winters. That means nothing to smokers. If that means going out minus 12, minus 15, minus 20, if that's the way they have to do it to smoke, they'll do it. They're just like, fine, I got a 10-minute break. I'll put on my big heavy coat, my boots, and go stand out in the goddamn snowstorm just so I can smoke for a few minutes. So the last guard they're dedicated and they're holding on.
And I knew people that like couldn't make it through a meal without having to smoke. So they would be in the middle of the meal and have to get up and go smoke. And I was never a smoke while you eat type person. That's gross to me. Even grosser.
It's been quite a while. And I mean, given the solitary life I lead now, where I don't see anybody anyway, it's just been a while since I was around anybody that smoked. Like, so the last time I went to Sydney, I had some more dental work to do back in October. I actually got a ride with my uncle and his family, and his wife is a heavy smoker, and like they actually took turns driving, and she would like smoke while driving, which I think is a horrible thing to do. But of course, I wasn't going to say shit. But I was like, I don't know. You had time to smoke when you weren't driving. Maybe don't smoke while driving. I don't know. But I still see a lot of that as people smoking while driving.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rule against it, but I don't know. I don't think you should. But yeah, to get through a meal, that's weird. It's not something I can relate to. Because like I said, I was kind of a fake smoker. I only did it for about 9 or 10 months, and I never got hooked or anything. I probably didn't even inhale properly. I don't know. I was just doing it to avoid somebody is what I was doing. But anyway.
Brazil.
So Brazil, I like the way they say it in Street Fighter 2. Brazil. USSR. Yeah. I could do the whole thing. But once again, we're doing one of my absolutely favorite movies. We've done a few on here that are right up there, like Amelie, Akira, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. These are all shows we did. Those are all big favorites. This is right up there with them. I love Brazil. But I mean, unlike some of those others where I'm just like, well, it's one of my favorite movies, but I'm not going to push it on people or anything like that. Like, I think it's a really good movie. I do honestly think Brazil is one of the best movies ever made. I do. Like the British Film Institute has it at like number 54 for like best British film. I'm like, are you crazy? It is the best British film. Like, what's better? But anyway, I don't know. Because I just feel really, really strongly about Brazil. I first saw it sometime in 1998. And I remember it struck a chord with me because I recognized Jonathan Pryce right off because he was in my head because I'd seen him in the latest James Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies, where he's the bad guy. So I was like, hey, it's the bad guy for Tomorrow Never Dies, but he's younger. So I just remember that. So I can always associate, like, you know, Tomorrow Never Dies being a 1997 movie I saw in theater, being fairly fresh in my mind when I saw this movie sometime in 98. Excuse me. And, you know, from the very first watch, I was really enchanted. Trying to think of some of the other words. So a used future, that's another one that people use sometimes where it's like, it's kind of technological, but because what we have here, again, it's not specifically set in the future. It's just set in the 20th century in a weird anachronistic time period with a schizo technology, as they say sometimes, and you have various technologies that would not really coexist. And also what's cool is like it's a world of decay. Everything's breaking down, which is a big sort of running joke in the movie. Right. Is that like a lot of this stuff doesn't work very well. It's constantly breaking down, but people are just used to it and just don't really even care. Like even some of the stuff that's not technological, like there's a really bizarre part where like he's gone back to the apartment, which of course by this point has been destroyed by the maintenance workers, but he gets invited to his mother's party thing, and he gets invited by a singing telegram, which is crazy. Like this woman comes in and sings it to him, and like he says, "Well, wait a minute." He's just like, "You're just here now. The party started an hour ago." And she's like, "Yeah, we're very backlogged." So it gives you the idea that this is a type of world where, like, if you ordered a pizza, like probably it might come next week or something. Like everything's really inefficient and backlogged and fucked up. I mean, the whole premise of the movie, the whole action of the movie is kicked off by just a small mistake, right? That's what starts the whole thing. It's just a typographical error. A T gets changed to a B through a weird accident with a typewriter, and it kicks off the events. Like none of this would have happened without that happening.
A bug got in there.
Yeah. There's a bug in the system, literally. but yeah, I mean, we've seen again it's like this before. It's just it's a crazy governmental bureaucracy, very much in the what's the word I'm looking for? Well, anyway, somewhat, you know, a lot like 1984, Big Brother and all that. There's some small differences. Like one is I haven't read 1984 in a few years, and I couldn't find my copy. I was looking at my books just because I thought I'd show up. But I'm pretty sure in 1984 the government has eradicated religion. In this, with all the Christmas stuff, you see religion still sort of exists, but it's maybe been a little tainted and twisted by it. There's lots of background details in this movie that you can miss. Like you have to either pay really close attention or watch it multiple times, like I have. Like there's a part where he goes through a crowd of people walking around, and there's a group holding up a sign saying "Consumers for Christ," and they have like a picture, and on the thing it's like a crucifix with a dollar sign on it. So it's just like the best like example of the over commercialization of Christmas you could ever imagine. So it's like, yes, Christmas is all throughout this movie. There's Christmas decorations, even in really humorous places. Like there's a part where when he's trying to escape the Institute and the armed guard is trying to stop him, and he goes back to the console to like yell at all the stormtroopers to come after him. You know, the console's all full of tinsel and garland and all this stuff. It's like that. It's really important to them to have all the Christmas decorations up. So the society does, I guess, have religion, although it seems like it's probably been a little bit twisted by this party, whoever it is that's in charge. But it's a heavily decayed governmental bureaucracy in a world that's sort of apart, very Kafkaesque, which is again is one of my favorite words and terms, and we've talked about it before. A lot like something like, speaking of what we do have, here's The Trial by Franz Kafka, his great unfinished novel, which is very similar kind of in plot. In the what happens in this movie, in this book, is the main character Joseph K gets arrested. We have no idea why. Like you never find out. Although it seems like it's very possible that, much like in this movie, it's probably a mistake. Because as far as we know, Joseph K hasn't done anything. Then just one day, agents show up at his house and say he's arrested, and they never tell him what he's arrested for or what he's charged with. And the whole thing is this crazy nightmare going against this, again, super oppressive bureaucracy and trying to figure things out and cut through red tape and never getting any answers. Like, you read the whole book, there is no answer in here. You're not going to find out, aha, that's why. Like, no answers at all. So, and if you want a kind of interesting connection, maybe it's not that big of a connection, but there's a character in this movie named Harvey Lime, who is actually played by one of the co-writers. That's the screenplay was done by Gilliam himself, famous playwright Tom Stoppard, and this third man, Charles McEwen. And that's Charles McEwen as Harvey Lime. And it seems to me the name is so close that Harvey Lime is probably an allusion to Harry Lime, the character from a movie we did on here in our Orson Welles series, The Third Man. Whereas Orson Welles plays Harry Lime. Interesting thing about Orson Welles is, of course, that movie we did in that series was one of his acting roles, but he was mostly known as a director. What's a movie he directed? Well, he directed the 1962 adaptation of this, The Trial. So Orson Welles knew some stuff about that. So I think that's kind of some interesting connections there.
It is.
But I also, not to jump around too much because I want to do this more in an organized fashion, but I do love that scene where he first winds up in the new department and he goes downstairs and he goes to his little office, and it's so oppressive, and he's actually sharing the desk through the wall with Harvey Lime. I've had nightmares that are kind of like that exact same thing, about being like stuck in some tiny out of the way office by myself. Like it's everybody's nightmare if you're like afraid of, like, I don't know, the world of like Dilbert or something. Or, you know, you can see a more contemporary and less soul-shattering version of it and realistic in something like Office Space or something. But here's the nightmare brought into its full fruition. It's like being in this tiny cubicle office thing. They call it an office. It's more like a cell. And you're even sharing your desk. You don't even have a full desk. You're sharing the desk through the wall. I always thought that scene was really great.
Well, that the wall moves apparently because Lime's like pushing it. And his is like 3 times the size of...
yeah, there's a constant sort of tug of war for the desk. And Lime actually has a computer and he doesn't, so he has to go over there to try to borrow the computer. And Lime is so afraid of them taking stuff away from him. And the first thing he says when he tries to go in, he's like, I don't have any more chairs. I only have the chair I'm left with. Again, it makes you think of that beaten down guy from Office Space, the guy that was obsessed with the red stapler. Because the whole thing is everybody just kept coming in and taking his stuff and moving him places. Like, Lime is kind of like that, obviously, you see. Like, he's been shunted around and people take his stuff and he's just become so paranoid about the whole thing. So, yeah. So, I mean, this movie, while it's a serious movie, is a very good sort of black comedy, too. I mean, makes sense coming from somebody like Gilliam, who, yeah, we did do 12 Monkeys. That was the other Gilliam movie we did on here. But I'm sure I talked a bit about this one because that's by far my favorite Terry Gilliam movie. For all those reasons, I love its world. It's like top like 5, if not higher, for me for like created worlds on a movie set and just created sets. They're just so great looking. Like that and Blade Runner are probably like the 2 best. And this follows Blade Runner by just a few years. And they both have so much in common in that they're both sort of like, obviously Blade Runner is the more futuristic and it's cyberpunk and one of the first examples of cyberpunk. This isn't cyberpunk. This is a diesel punk semi-noir thing. Has some definitely has some similarities to the movie we did, the French movie we did, Alphaville, which might have been sort of the beginning of that futuristic noir kind of style. The interesting thing, like we said about Alphaville, was in its visual aesthetic was kind of the opposite of this, in that nothing was created. The whole thing was it was all shot in real places around in Paris. Just at the time in the early 60s, some of those buildings were so new that it looked futuristic to the contemporary audience. And as we said, even now, it still holds up. You're like, yeah, it does kind of seem futuristic in a way. Whereas this movie is completely opposite, where all these sets are created, definitely, with all sorts of things added to them. Terry Gilliam is a very big fan of the pneumatic tubes and things like that. And so it's an interesting world, again, because you see, like, because you see the squalor that some of the poorer people live in, but even if you look at the opulence, like where his mother lives and, where he goes to that big party, you still see those ugly tubes, like, dangling from the ceiling. So there's just no getting away from it. this really poorly put together world. It seems like the British are really good at that, because when I think again, like it was a British crew on Blade Runner, and of course, what's his name was British, the director, Scott.
Ridley
Scott, right? And also, when you think about other media from the time, it all makes sense in a way. Like we said, it's almost like everybody understood coming towards 1984 for real. After, you have a novel written in the 40s called 1984. It felt like in the early 80s, as we got closer to the actual date, a lot of people, particularly British people, seemed to like really, I don't know, be affected by it. Or it's also probably, we talk about like sort of a reaction to Thatcher's England. Because think about it. Think about some of the comics. Like there's V for Vendetta, which is about, a semi-futuristic Britain that's very fascist and controlled, again, by a big brother type state with all sorts of crazy violations of people's rights and hyper-surveillance. Hyper-surveillance is a big part of this movie. And also, when you think about this massive city that this takes place in with its huge buildings, when you see Sam's apartment, you see this. It's in this impossibly huge skyscraper surrounded by others, which is a lot like the mega cities from the British comic 2000 AD Judge Dredd. So so there's a lot of stuff from like the sort of the early 80s there that the Brits produced that all sort of ties in. Even hell, I'll even go even one step further. In their very famous album The Wall by Pink Floyd, which was I think 1980. You get like hints of that kind of stuff about totalitarianism and all that, again, 1984-esque stuff. So I feel like a lot of specifically British artists seem really motivated and inspired by 1984 as we approach 1984 to like make art that kind of reflected a world like that in a way, starting based on British society. But
what year was 1984? What year was that written?
It's in the 40s. I don't remember.
Just a ballpark. 40s? Okay.
It's in the 40s.
I think pretty much everything that's dystopian post that time is pulling from 1984. It's hard not to.
Yeah. 49, 40s. So that's interesting because that's the same year as the Metropolis manga that we spoke about in the other.
Oh, okay.
In the other show. So 49. So yeah. And of course, a lot of people might forget if they haven't read the novel in a while, but 1984 does not specifically take place in 1984. What they say is like one of the things that like the party, the Big Brother, and everybody, they actually took away the like calendar system and dates so that nobody even really knows what year it is. So 1984 is like a guess, which is pretty funny. But originally, I guess the script for this had started from just sort of being like an actual adaptation of 1984. And then Terry Gilliam said like he got beaten to the punch because somebody else, actually, they did make a 1984. Michael Radford directed a film 1984, which came out, I believe, in 1984. I've seen scenes from it, but I've never seen the whole thing.
I haven't either.
Let's see here. Brazil, this is Gilliam's talking. Brazil came specifically from the approaching of 1984. It was looming. In fact, the original title of Brazil was 1984 and a half. Fellini was one of my great gods, and it was 1984, so let's put them together. Unfortunately, that bastard Michael Radford did a version of 1984, and he called it 1984, so I was blown. Which I think is just for the better anyway. This gives us a completely sort of original story. I mean, yes, it borrows heavily from 1984, but it still is original and different. It's interesting that Gilliam notes that at least back at the time, he hadn't read the novel himself, and yet the ending is very similar, although there's differences. I mean, full spoilers, people, that's what we do on here. Full spoilers, Brazil, but our hero is captured and tortured, and that's exactly what happens in 1984, too, but there's a slight difference. Because in this one, you could say, like, it's a very sad victory, but his victory is that they break his mind completely. As they say, he goes away. Whereas in 1984, it's more of a defeat because Winston is tortured into basically being brainwashed, with the last line being, he loved Big Brother. It was like, they broke him, but they broke him in that they got him to be, converted to their side and their way of thinking. Whereas in this one, it's more like Sam has escaped into his own mind, into sort of a fantasy. But both are downer endings for sure. And that didn't sit well. That didn't sit well with certain people. And we talked again. Another subject we talk about a lot in this is executive meddling. We certainly talked about it when we did, say, a film from 1984. Ironically, Once Upon a Time in America. How that was taken and edited against the director's will, not just having stuff cut out, but then scenes are actually rearranged in chronological order, completely changing the spirit of the film. Like, this film is right up there with also being butchered in similar ways. Stuff was cut down. The ending was edited so that none of the downer stuff stayed, so it seemed like it did end on the happy note. And for a long time, they wouldn't release the proper cut, and Gilliam, spent a couple years lobbying for this to actually happen. He took out a full-page ad in the trade magazine Variety, urging Sheinberg to release Brazil as its intended version. Sheinberg spoke publicly of his dispute with Gilliam in interviews and ran his own advertisement in Daily Variety, offering to sell the film. Gilliam conducted private screenings of Brazil without the studio's approval for film schools and local critics. On the same night, Universal's award contender Out of Africa premiered in New York. Brazil was awarded the Los Angeles Film Critics Association Awards for Best Picture, Best Screenplay, and Best Director. This prompted Universal to finally agree to release a modified 132-minute version supervised by Gilliam in 1985. But that's still not the final version of the film, or the one that we're doing here. There goes my fucking camera again.
This is the director's cut that I watched.
Yeah, this is the proper cut. 143 minutes.
It was the whatever time you had told me earlier. So, okay, cool. I don't know that I've seen I guess it's just a television edit that is the only one that actually exists with the ending completely different, right?
Yeah, it was a television edit, as they did to basically make it so they could fit within a 2-hour block with commercials.
Which that studio exec, I do agree with. Only in the sense that, sure, this is a lot of people consider a great film, but I don't know that it would be commercially successful. I don't think this is going to translate to a mainstream audience. It's too dark,
particularly
too British,
particularly in the US.
They're not going to get the humor. They're not going to get the.
Well, that's exactly what happened. It did not do well at all. I could have predicted. It was well received in Europe, not in the West, or I guess, but not in North America. Motherfucker, fighting with my camera. Oh, so much fun.
Well,
stop switching cameras, you bastard.
As long as I don't had a discussion about this before, so Cole may have some camera issues.
But. Yeah, it's gotten very temperamental and annoying. But anyway, I'll just try not to touch the laptop too much. Although I was trying to use it to look at some of the other stuff, but oh well. But yeah, that is what happened. It did not do well, but it was well received in Europe off the bat, which is nice. European audiences usually are more open to these types of things, I suppose. This version was released. Yeah, it was only for that too, because the original version was released in Europe and internationally by 20th Century Fox without issue. However, U.S. distribution was handled by Universal, whose executives felt the ending tested poorly. And there's where Sid Sheinberg comes in. So that's another thing it has in common with Blade Runner, and that Blade Runner was edited, and also they were like too much of a downer ending, and they changed the ending and made it a happy one there too.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree with the ending at all. I think it's perfect. It's the way it needs to be. I love downer ending, so that's probably me personally. So
Yeah, I mean, this downer ending really did take me by surprise when it first happened because I was like, oh wow, that's it, you know. But
It did
especially
seem
when you
kind of
find out
abrupt.
like
Yeah.
it is abrupt, especially when you find out like a major character was killed off screen. Like you hear it, but you don't see it, and then he just, you know, to find out that she died, like just by having the semi comical visit from Mister What's his name dressed up as Santa, and he's just like, oh, and it's another example of very 1984 stuff where they would change the language. You know, they wouldn't say dead. They might say things. And at first he says like, I'm afraid she's like retired. You know, and you know
Retired from life.
he uses several different euphemisms there before they get into it. It's like dead, like yeah, and other departments had different words for it too, like deleted and things like that. Of course, another big part of 1984 was, you know, changing and censoring language, changing language, cutting out words. And in Alphaville, in the movie, you know, they were talking about how every day they were removing words from the dictionary to make language and life more efficient. They were just cutting out words more and more. So there's a bit of a twist of that on this too, where like we're not necessarily hearing that words are being taken away, but they're being changed. And
well, I guess when people are so swiftly killed on a daily basis, you probably need to come up with a more socially acceptable term for it.
well, I mean, you have a Department of Information Retrieval, which really just means like interrogation and torture. That's what it means, right? Information retrieval is interrogation through torture, which sometimes winds up either driving somebody mad or even killing them. And here, once again, you know, he finds out his own friend is one of the people that does this, and he suggests it to him in the end, Jack. But like, he talks about how Buttle, who was the one who mistakenly arrested. By the way, they didn't use the word arrested. When the stormtroopers crash into Buttle's house and tear everything up and point guns at him and put you know, it's more than a black bag, you know. In V for Vendetta and things, you have a black bag over your head. In this, it's a whole like, I don't know, it's like a big sack over you and then a thing around your neck. Like, you know, when the officer comes out to read to him, he never says you're under arrest. In fact, he says that he's invited, that it's an invitation. So they really make good use of the language. It's kind of like also a funny moment too, like after Sam is arrested, you get a good example of that joke that's used in fiction sometimes, you know, which is sometimes referred to as murder and jaywalking. Whereas they like list off all his charges, and those would be giving aid and comfort to the enemies of society, attempting to conceal a fugitive from justice, passing confidential documents to unauthorized personnel, destroying government property vis-a-vis several personnel characters, taking possession under false pretenses of said carriers, forging the signature of the head of records, misdirecting funds in the form of a check to a Buttle through unauthorized channels, tampering with central services supply ducts, obstructing forces of law and order in the exercise of their duty, disregarding the good name of the government, the Department of Information Retrieval, attempting to disrupt the ministry's internal communicating system, and wasting ministry time and paper.
Wasting paper is a crime.
Yeah. Again, it's not a digital world. Paper's a big deal here. And that's what maybe I guess it's symbolic is how that's what eliminates Tuttle in the fantasy rescue sequence, right? Like it seems like Tuttle's rescued him, they're going to get away with it. Then suddenly Tuttle starts getting hit by paper until it just consumes him and he disappears. So maybe that's somewhat symbolic, all the paper of this oppressive bureaucracy with all its missives and forms and regulations, which just occur over and over again. Throughout. So Robert De Niro seems out of place in this movie, but what's really interesting is that the character he plays does work for him, but that's not what he auditioned for. So they obviously had somebody else in mind. He auditioned for who was it? I think his boss, like his not the head boss, but the guy that was just above him. Or no, it was for Jack maybe. Okay, Robert De Niro read the script and expressed his interest in the role. Okay, so that was for Jack, who is the friend that winds up torturing him at the end. Gilliam had already promised the part to Palin, who seemed. I'm not used to seeing Michael Palin that young, so to me, he's like
I
completely
know.
unrecognizable.
I didn't know it was
Afraid,
him. I had to look it up.
yeah, Palin described the character as someone who was everything that Jonathan Pryce's character wasn't. He's stable, he had a family, he was settled, comfortable, hardworking, charming, sociable, and utterly and totally unscrupulous. But anyway, so that's the funny thing is that Robert De Niro read the script and he wanted that part, and he didn't get it, and then they offered him the Tuttle part. I'm just thinking that only makes sense. I mean, it's always, the movie is what it is. It's hard to imagine it otherwise. But it seems weird to me that somebody else would have done that role. It seems, I don't know. It seems right for De Niro. But anyway, I like the character. And it's too bad. And that's one of the things where it's too bad the fantasy sequence isn't real. Because apart from that, he only gets a couple scenes. And they don't amount to much. It's just more like he's like a weird kind of like rebel against the system. But he's not. Because in this fantasy sequence, it's like, yes, he's part of some sort of like resistance group that's organized, but he never hints at that for real in the actual what actually happens in the movie. And I get the sense he's not, right? I think it's more like, yeah, he works outside the system. He likes to piss them off and break their rules, but I don't think he's actually part of some organized resistance. There is some organized resistance because there have been terrorist bombings going on they're in their 13th year of it. Again, I think maybe some commentary there, maybe at least referring to the troubles over in Ireland. Because they're just like, well, they're in the 13th year of it. And they're just like, oh, well, And then the government official who's being interviewed about it, this is the very start of the movie, just sort of dismisses it like it's no big deal. And again, people have gotten so used to it that, like, remember the restaurant scene, which plays a lot like a Monty Python sketch, which makes sense, being directed by one of the members of it. He's having dinner with his mother and all her superficial friends, and a bombing actually takes place in the restaurant and kills several people around them. But most of the guests who aren't in the actual blast zone just carry on. The band stops briefly and then covered in soot start up a more lively tune. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of a Monty Python sketch, which only makes sense. So they just show like how desensitized and used to like violence this world, the people of this world has become. And he's one of them. Like he's the same way. Like he's not exactly like one of those only sane man characters. Like he is disturbed by the society, but it really takes a while, I think. Like at first he's just like everybody else. He just more or less accepts it. He's a cog in the machine too. He works in the department to the point where like he doesn't even want to be promoted because he's just sort of comfortable in his little rut. And when he finds out that his mother was behind the promotion, he gets really mad about it. His mother having been, I guess, what was it? I guess his father had maybe been some sort of bigwig or something like that. I forget, but he's really annoyed that his mother's like interfering with it. He just wants to be left alone.
I just love the look of this movie so much.
I mean, yeah, and that's what I can talk the most about. Obviously, there are themes, and like, I love the story, and the characters are good, but it's really the world. That's really what I love so much about the movie. I love the world. Although, obviously, when I name some of the movie worlds I love, this is not one of ones I would want to live in. Like, hell no. Like, it's a decaying, it's a decaying society. It's overly polluted. It's all falling apart, and it's run by a super oppressive government that controls every facet of life. And it's not even that far-fetched. I mean, at the exact same time that this movie was out, you had like in East Germany, the fucking Stasi. They were doing all that kind of shit. In fact, they were super good at it. Like they weren't like one that anybody like overthrew or got away with. They're one of the most efficient organizations in the world when it came to like surveillance and controlling people. And that would have been going on right at that time. So there's people now that live through shit like that to a certain extent. Yeah, it is played up, of course, in this movie a bit, but still. The hyper surveillance, people being arrested without cause, all that stuff really did happen and probably still does happen in some places.
Well, probably like, McCarthyism, stuff like that probably played a big part into stuff like this. Then the thought process of where something could be in the future.
Right. What's interesting about this, again, and something that makes it different from 1984, and something that makes it different from the real world, is that in 1984, one of the reasons why Big Brother and its party is able to keep such a hold is that they're like pointing out like outside enemies, because they talk about how they're at war with this country or like, and that's one of the things that changes too, is like, there's a couple different continents. One's called like Oceania, and I don't remember the order of things, so you'll forgive me for this because it's been a few years since I read the book, but there's one part like towards the end of the book where like things have flipped now, where it was like they were at war with they were at war with one of the other continents, but now it's changed. They're not at war with them anymore. Now their ally, Oceania, and the books read we have always been at war with Oceania, like, because they ended history, right? So their idea there was also like, it wasn't like this whole thing about times changing or politics changing, or we were at war with this country and now they're our allies and now these guys are enemies. They just write it out, we've always been at war with them. And of course, the whole thing about something like McCarthyism comes with the Cold War. That whole East-West thing of having an oppressive, very present, scary, shadowy, ever threatening enemy, right? Because that makes it so much easier to control people. There's actually nothing like that in this movie. They never point out like that they're at war with anybody, or there's some outside force that's like an enemy. But of course, they do have like their own domestic terrorists, but they don't seem to talk about them very much. Although, again, if you pay attention to little things in the background, you see more of it. Like in a lot of the offices at the Institute, there's a poster there that says, "Don't suspect your friend, report him." So, that takes, if you see something, say something, a lot further. Even if you see something, say something has always been a little bit sketchy, but I get it. But yeah. That actually says, don't suspect your friend, report him. So, and one of the things is there's an ad for like one of the cruise lines for like vacations to take you somewhere, and it mentions that it has a panic-free atmosphere. So it just points out like it's just daily life here to like constantly be like threatened and afraid and possibly panic. They're like, hey, we can offer you maybe not some panic for a while if you go to a different place. Because also, like the fake Blade Runner ending, you have this idea of him driving with her, like they're finally outside the city. There's hills, you don't see trees, but they're away, which is kind of like the fake ending, which I'm glad they get rid of from the theatrical cut of Blade Runner, where it's like they're driving, and for the first time in the movie, you see trees and sunlight. And I get it, but it didn't fit. So this idea of just sort of escaping this oppressive environment, not being able to get out of it. But yeah, the city itself is so great. And actually, when I was talking about some of the terms attached to the look, when I said the retrofuturism, that was actually coined by none other than what's his name? Jean-Pierre Jeunet and his partner Marc Caro, who of course would borrow from that for their own movies. And we did one of them. We did The City of Lost Children, but also Delicatessen. Both those movies, you can feel like how they have a very similar look and feel to the world of Brazil. So they were definitely inspired. There's quite a few movies that borrow stuff from Brazil. Actually, the Tim Burton Batmans for sure. Like that retro kind of, it's present day, but super retro Gotham they made is very much in the vein of Brazil. I'm trying to remember the name of that guy. What's his name? He was the. It doesn't matter. But anyway, he was the designer for Gotham. Anyway, he mentioned being influenced by this movie. So, and of course, again, you can trace it all again back to the beginning with Metropolis and German Expressionism. And then the noir films of the 40s, all those harsh angles and dark facades and things like that. It's interesting. So speaking kind of Alphaville, how we said like Alphaville is the opposite of this movie in that like none of the sets were constructed; it was all real world stuff in Paris. Some of the films, some of the stuff here was actually also in Paris at the apartment complex Les Espaces de Braxis, which was made in 1978, and incredibly massive. And again, maybe was one of the influences for something like Mega City 1 in Judge Dredd. Because if you do like an image search of that, like it's just huge. It's I think it's like, what is it? It's like 12 square miles, something like that. Okay, actually, so it wasn't even open until 83. They started construction in 78, opened in 83. So only shortly before they started this movie. So it's probably some of the earliest looks at that. Just a huge, huge complex. It must house thousands and thousands of people. I can't think now, but there's a few other buildings like that. I won't drag it out, but I've got a book that's about it's about history between the wars. Basically, it's basically between World War I and World War II, and talks about various. But I remember there was this chapter that talked a lot about architecture, and there was this place over in I don't remember which European country, but it like had made this massive. Again, it was kind of similar to the Paris thing. This is decades before. This is like the 20s. Or maybe the early 30s at the latest, and they made this massive apartment complex where like thousands of people could live together. Something that was completely unprecedented at the time, never existed before in the world, and it's still up today. I'll have to look into it and find out what it is. I found stuff like that fascinating.
Is this the one in China you're talking about?
No.
Oh, there's one in China like that as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. China got in on that. They have to with all the people they have. Yeah. But the earliest ones were in Europe. And I'm sure you've heard of this too. Like Hitler had this plan for after they won the war to basically tear down Berlin and rebuild it as kind of like a super futuristic kind of Berlin. And you can find like pictures of like the architecture design and stuff for that. It is really fascinating. Never happened, of course.
Yeah, they're really getting ahead of himself. Let's win the war first, Adolf. Come on.
He had a lot of plans.
I don't have blue eyes, but I promise.
Also, one of the things that one of the main things they cut out when they were doing the crappy edits of this, besides changing the ending, was they cut all the dream sequences, which really, if you take those out, like then our character is like nothing. Like the dreams are what make him different and special, right? Because he's supposed to be an everyman character. The point is he's an everyman character. He's not super smart. He's not super talented at something. He's not super brave. He's not a badass. He's an everyman. But he has to have something that makes him different. And what makes him different is these dreams, these fantastical dreams where he's a hero, a shining hero of light fighting against these oppressive forces. And it's kind of interesting. He dreams about this woman before he actually sees her, which is never explained, which I don't care, which is fine with me. But I mean, if you watch a version of the movie that takes all that out, then again, like it seems to make you wonder why he'd even be the main character. I think you really need those dreams, which are like a great sort of compare and contrast to the environment he lives in. He's fighting against this world of, it's sort of like a dark fantasy setting, right? Like a World of K. It reminds me kind of like if you played like a game like Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which takes place in sort of a post-apocalyptic ruined fantasy world. That's kind of what those dream sequences look like, only maybe a little more urban, of course. And I like how his like enemy is this gigantic warrior in like full samurai armor. It's really cool. But yeah, if you remove those dreams, it also makes things more vague too. So what? I've never seen the edited version, but imagine we don't get to see his dreams, but we just hear him say, "Oh, you're the woman from my dreams," but we didn't get to see them. That would be annoying. We just take his word that he's had some vague dreams that she's in. Like, that's his whole thing when he meets her, saying, I dreamt about you. And in my dreams, I love you, which of course she's realistically freaked out by and tries to get rid of him.
Without the dream sequences, it's a different movie. I mean, completely. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the ending. I mean, you got to take that out at the end if you want it to have a happy ending.
But I mean, yeah, it's one thing to say, remove the mind break thing, but these are just the dreams he's having beforehand. Like I said, they're what make him special and sort of set him up as the hero. in a way, because we see that he seems at first reasonably content with his lot in life and the world. Like he's probably annoyed by a lot of these things too, but he accepts them like most people. It's just like, okay, well, things break down all the time, and this happens, and that happens, and the state has way too much power. But you know, no one even thinks it's too odd that the state has so much power. It's been going on for so long; they're used to it. To the point, remember, like right. We find out like right when Buttle is mistakenly arrested, and they have that whole method of crashing to his house. One of them is to come in from the floor above, and they cut a hole in the floor, like, and that's where she lives. That's how she gets involved. She's their upstairs neighbor. But like we see, like right in the aftermath of that, there's two maintenance guys in there with a slab ready to like fill the hole up, and of course it drops right through. It's like, fuck, they went back to metric. Why didn't they tell us? But the whole point is they do this so often that they've got like on standby replacement floor chunks, right? Like it's all again standard procedure.
They flip-flop to metric again. Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of
cool
stuff. Did you
happen to notice? Like sorry, real quick. Did you happen to notice in that scene when they cut the hole in the floor and it fell, like it was full of trash. Like the floor, it was like a bunch of garbage in between the layer. I thought that was kind of a cool, you know.
Again, it's like a world where like everything is just barely held together, right? Like everything's just barely held together.
It's like in a world full of garbage, you know, you got to find a way to use it, I guess.
Use it. So yeah, otherwise it'll just pile up. So here's your insulation. It's garbage. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. But yeah, I just love all those touches. They're so great. It's such a great lived in world that you can totally imagine and picture other parts of, although really the whole point is to keep it within the city. Whatever's beyond the city, I don't know, whatever it is. He imagines those hills. Maybe they exist. I don't know. We do see that where she lives is kind of like a little bit outside the urban zone. It's more like an industrial zone. But there's also a fun like fake out in that too first, because at first you see the buildings and they look kind of pristine and nice. Then it pulls back and you see that was just a proposed model for what they were planning to do and never fucking did. It's just like, yeah, at some point this will be like beautiful, pristine, wonderful, clean buildings. Instead it's just a bunch of people living in filth, everything like that. And again, an idea,
it's stuff like that humor will not translate to a modern, a mainstream audience. I think they need more like farts and people falling down and stuff like that's humor.
Because I'll tell you, I think is one of my favorite jokes in the movie. I don't even think I probably caught it maybe the first few times I watched it, but I remembered it this time. I saw it. Is there a part where I think it's the first time he meets Jack, you know, he just runs into Jack in the lobby of the big government building. And he's just like, oh, Jack, it's been a while, you know, so they're catching up and talking about stuff, and he's trying to tell him at the time when the movie starts, Sam is in the Department of Records, and he's trying to help his old friend, saying, you know, records is a dead end, man. You want to get out of there. There's no room for promotion or anything like that. And then he's talking about how well his life is going, and he's got promotions, and he's married. And I like how Sam misremembers, and he says, oh, and you've got the twins, and he goes, no, triplets. And Sam answers, triplets. Wow, time does fly. Which, of course, makes no sense. He's making it sound like the twins have grown into triplets. I just love that line. I think that's a really easy line to miss, but it's so funny. It's like, oh, the twins are triplets now. They grew up so fast. Oh, by the way, it was Anton First I was talking about. He was the set designer guy for the Burton Batmans. He did production design. Anyway, he specifically had studied Brazil because he liked that look and wanted to use it. Again, sort of a present day, but also in the past retro thing, which they used in Batman the Animated Series very well to nice effect too. Which is one of the reasons why that show stands out, has remained so good after all these years. Is having that look and aesthetic. And I remember in watching the stuff about the extras there, them saying like one of the things was we had to fight with the network over was, you know, they wanted to have like laser guns and cops that would like use. And we're like, no, we need like actual firearms, or it's going to clash completely with the aesthetic we're doing. They had to really fight for that to get, you know, actual just.
But that's why it's so good though. Because it's Batman, you know.
Yeah, and they had to fight for it. And I think I said before, when you compare and contrast it to the Spider-Man of the 90s, which I love and was a really good show, it was so constrained by that shit. And that everybody, including the, like, I can accept that, Shield's in the show. The Shield agents had like laser blasters that maybe you could stun people. I accept that. But they had the NYPD using it. Like, that show was a great show, but it could have been so much better if they had eased up on shit like that. You couldn't have any violence in that show. Like, if you watch that show, Spider-Man fights so many bad guys, and yet if you actually watch the fights, he almost never kicks or punches anyone. Mostly he just swings around and lets them trap themselves. He webs them up. I mean, sure, Spider-Man does web people up, but guess what? Spider-Man hits people too. He almost never hits anybody in that show. Like, he might be able to get one punch in per fight. That was how, how much like Fox Kids or whatever came down on them. Like, no violence, So that was a good show. They did what they could within the, the boundaries, but it could have been so much better. Still is kind of the definitive Spider-Man for me, animated anyway. But anyway, luckily with Batman, they were able to win that battle. Like saying, we've got this retro kind of 40s style. We didn't have people blast the cops shooting lasers. We need real firearms, and they did win that battle. Thank God. But yeah, but anyway, that look is one of the again. There's many reasons why that show is awesome, but I like that. I mean, the comics aren't like that exactly. They are sometimes. It all sort of depends upon what writer or artist is currently doing it. You read Batman comics over the decades, and you'll see how different versions of Gotham appear, and that's all fine. It's kind of like how people do different interpretations of the Joker. I accept all that. My favorite Gotham was definitely the late 80s, early 90s Gotham, as drawn by artist Norm Breyfogle. Like, you might not know the name, but look it up. Like, he's maybe one of the most underrated Batman artists out there. He was known for doing sort of like really exaggerated faces and things like that, but he did great stuff. That's some of my favorite Batman. But anyway, because as to the story's fine, but it's really those flourishes and touches of drawing us into the world to make it something, because it does sort of follow a 1984-esque story. Although, again, it's funny. It's doubly depressing when you think how like negatively it ends, considering he wasn't trying to like overthrow the government or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They were just trying to do the right thing. It all starts with a small mistake that kills an innocent man, and of course nobody gives a shit, right? It's like, whatever. Right. Here's a receipt for your husband, which they weren't even going to send. He takes it upon himself. He feels like he has to deliver it to her personally. They weren't going to send, because that's another thing. You have a whole passing the football of blame, because when his boss calls him in and discovers the mistake, Sam's just like, well, that's not actually our department. And he's like, oh, thank God. That's all they care about. They don't care that some innocent man has been wrongly arrested, tortured, and murdered. What they care about is there was an actual mistake, and like they don't want anybody to actually own up to it. But it's like, oh, thank God that wasn't us. And at the very end, just before he's about to be tortured, like that's why Jack is so mad at him, because Jack had trusted him and tried to help him out a bit. He's like, Jack, please help. I'm scared. He's like, shut up, you bastard. He's mad at him because, again, he's made him look bad through association.
Right.
So it just shows how ruthless everybody is, and it's just become routine in things like I don't know, simple human compassion or Long Gone. Because it all starts from just trying to do the right thing. He just tries to do that, and man, I gotta stop saying she and say her name, and her name is.
I just had it in front of me too. From Chud.
Oh, is she?
And many other things.
Yeah, I don't know the actor too well. No, it's not Shirley. Man, how do I keep losing her name? Jill Layton. Jill. The character is Jill. Jill Layton. The actress is Kim Greist, but Jill Layton. That's who I mean to say. Because like Jill, she really is disturbed. I mean, it was her neighbor, and they busted through her apartment to do it. So she is at least trying to do what she can to help the widow, and they all get caught up in this, because they're not trying to like fight or bring down the government. They're just trying to get some answers about what happened, and yet it all still spirals horribly. And at first, he does think she has something to do with the terrorists. She gets that suspicious package from the place she works and takes it to the mall. When it explodes with the bomb goes off in the mall, he blames her at first. He thinks that she's brought, she's part of the terrorist group bombing, but she is a little subversive, in that she's actually collected money for bribes that they used on various officials, but that's not quite the same as terrorist bombing. And he never even really apologizes to her for accusing her of that. So we never see the actual terrorists. The closest thing we see is somebody like Tuttle. And again, Tuttle, as far as we know, is not a terrorist or a revolutionary or rebel or anything like that. He's just sort of one guy, sticking it to the system in the way he can, but he's not, taking them on. He's going around doing unauthorized repairs and things like that. And it's wonderful revenge he helps Sam get on the two other, the two official repair guys that come and destroy his apartment, where he winds up switching the line so that they pump human sewage directly into their hazmat suits. That's a pretty exquisite revenge. I love those scenes too. That's Bob Hoskins, of course, is one of them.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, good old Bob Hoskins, who we talked quite a bit about when we did The Long Good Friday, which he's the main character in. But he's Spore. His name, they have weird names. He's Spore. I can't remember the other guy's name. They're pretty funny. And again, that their scenes, once again, sort of lapse into something that reminds you of a Monty Python sketch where they're going around blathering on about how they need to fix the place up. And they basically just destroy it. And towards the end, just before the revenge, they come in. The whole thing's iced over. It's just like, well, what happened? And they're like, well, your heating's gone. And then some. Because the place is like iced over, like it's been covered by a blizzard. But yeah, it's just a really great balance of sort of dark, serious subject matter, but with some really great sort of cutting humor. As you said, it's not super on the nose or obvious, so maybe other people aren't going to get it or like it, but I don't know.
I mean, like 12 Monkeys would be Gilliam's, mainstream movie. That's a much more digestible. I mean,
yeah,
more than this. I mean, but
yeah. And even that would probably have disappointed a lot of people because they're like, Bruce Willis in a time travel movie. It is, yes. But then you watch it, and there's probably a lot of people that were expecting something much more action-y.
It's
and
very
and not
tone though. There's not a lot of jokes being cracked in that one.
No, the only really funny stuff is the Brad Pitt stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For the most
there is some funny stuff in there, but
yeah,
not like this movie.
And in the few scenes we get in the future timeline he's from, when he's being sent back in that weird underground place, you have sort of the similar kind of visual aesthetic where you've got a bunch of weird screens all over the place and pipes and things like that. Something that obviously Gilliam's a fan of, but it's never been done better than is in here in Brazil.
So the ducks, everything is all about ducks and the pneumatic tubes and everything. So everything is in a tube of some sort.
Yeah, one of the things in the opening is like an advertisement on TV, right, for better ducks or something. Because the whole world is connected and run through these ducks. It's like you have to have better ducks, nicer looking ducks. So it's like the crapsack world. It's a bureaucracy clogged police state with all sorts of inefficiencies going on. There's schizophrenic tech and gadgets constantly breaking down, repressive security measures, endless paperwork, which is often pointless. Yeah. And there's a total lack of accountability. The whole point is you go to the Institute to find something out and, you're going to get nowhere. And it does reflect real life to a certain extent. We've all had that moment where it's like, I need to get this done. And they're like, fill out this form. So you fill it out, and then you're like, oh, no, we needed the other form. You need to go to the department down on the 3rd floor and talk to them. Everyone's experienced at least a little bit of that with something, the fucking DMV or whatever. So, and I mean, there are certain systems that are set up that are kind of impenetrable. Because, I told Jay this before, a few years ago, girl I was involved with who was in Thailand was going to visit here. And the Canadian embassy rejected her, and there was just no way to appeal it. There wasn't anything I could do. and who rejected it. Like, there's nobody even signing the form. All it says is, and again, no answers are given either. They don't say why, and they don't say what to do. All they say is, well, feel free to like go through the application process again, which by the way costs $250. And that was just a really frustrating moment for me because there was no one I could talk to. I even talked to my MLA and tried to get them to figure something out, and they just reached the same sort of wall. Like, I don't know, it's the embassy. And I'm not going to go on a diatribe here, but I really don't understand why Canada and Thailand don't have a better relationship, why people in Thailand can't just travel here. I mean, we've got worse relations with a country like China, and yet many Chinese come here without red tape. I'm talking about the ones living here. I just mean if a Chinese tourist says, I'm going to go to Canada for vacation, they don't have to go through an application process or jump through hoops or red tape. They get their passport stamped and then they're waved on in. And yet not for people from Thailand. I don't understand that. That seems really fucking
She was just trying to visit, right? She wasn't trying
to get a visit.
A work
no
permit or something.
And yet they made it seem like they didn't believe she'd go back, even though she at the time was employed, had her own home, and had a dog. So apparently embassy was like, no, it's all a front. She's just going to abandon all that shit so she can live here off our wonderful, amazing system. Like, fuck off. Yeah, that was 4 years ago, and I'm still super pissed about that. But that's like maybe one of the better examples I can give of coming up against like red tape and bureaucracy that you can't fight your way through. Like, I didn't know who to talk to or who to write. They didn't even sign the goddamn form. Just impenetrable. So that's super frustrating. So just imagine a world where everything is like that, and you get Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that far from reality in some ways.
As I said, it was kind of reality in places like East Germany. The Stasi, you look up that stuff, it was just like this to a certain extent. Except in a way, in some ways it was worse because the Stasi was more shadowy. Like in this, it's like it's this big monolith that controls everything. Whereas the Stasi was less visible, but you knew they were fucking there. And if you stepped out of line, suddenly, they're arresting you or interrogating you or whatever. I mean, they have a little bit of, because one of the things that shows, it shows exactly like why he gets caught in the end is like he goes certain places. You see he's being followed. You see a guy in a hat following him a few times. So he's not going to get away with it. It's like, get away with what? What did he do that was so wrong? Well, enough. But actually, I think this is where the term diesel punk comes from, which is actually kind of funny. So just think of an extension of the steampunk aesthetic, except moving forward a few decades, like 40s, 50s. That's what diesel punk would be. Which again, you can mix in with some other things like the retro future and all that kind of stuff. I think it was very clever of Gilliam to not set this. There's the camera again. To not set this in the future and say somewhere in the 20th century, because it very much is a mishmash, an amalgamation of various decades.
I love it. I love that everything is still analog. That's such a fun aesthetic,
For sure.
And the pneumatic tubes, which I don't really see those anywhere except for like banks and some like bigger corporate buildings still use them.
I don't see them anymore at all. But I think I've told you about this before, maybe off thing. But when I was a kid, growing up, at least into like the mid 90s, there was a store in our downtown. It was a department store called Kroll's. And if you are of that age, or the easiest thing I can say is if you watch, say, the original version of Miracle on 34th Street, you get a good shot of what Macy's and those big department stores in New York look like in the 40s. That's what Kroll's was like. It's much smaller, but that's exactly what Kroll's was like. There was nothing modern in it. It had wooden floors. It was 2 floors. It was very tight because it wasn't a big place. It used and it had the pneumatic tubes, which they used all the time. And the other thing is, like, I almost never went there except at Christmas. So I really associate with that whole Christmas look too. Yeah. So so that was the closest in my life I ever got to experiencing something like Miracle on 34th Street, the way all that looked. And that was right into the 90s. I think they understood they had that. So they specifically kept it that way. But anyway, it's long gone now. But at least that's a nice memory of my childhood. It's interesting because it's something like somebody much older than me in most places could only remember. But I remember it. I remember what it was like to go to a department store that looked and felt like that as a kid. And that was Kroll's. Rest in peace.
That's
But
right.
I
kids,
was just
we used to have
I was
stores.
just fascinated by the yeah. I was just fascinated by the tubes. I thought the tubes were great. You know, they were so cool to watch. Really liked it.
Yeah.
But now I haven't seen those anywhere in years and years. There's probably still, I mean, we've got some old buildings around here, so there's probably still some that might have them. Probably not in use, but still have them in the building. But I don't know. I haven't seen them.
You know what else
Interesting to find out.
I don't want to digress too much, but
Yeah,
you know
no.
what's something interesting that I've noticed recently? Do you remember like houses would have like intercom systems, like where you
Mhm.
like a push button? You know, I never had them. I think I may have had a friend that had one, but
You mean like built
I
into the house, or
yeah, built in.
okay, yeah. Yeah.
So you're
'Cause, I
like,
mean, we had like ones you could buy, like, you know, little ones, because we used to do that because my parents got sick of yelling at me when I was down in the basement. So we had one for, like, you know, your little intercom thing. But yeah, there's ones
probably
where you're built into the
yeah.
house. I don't think I ever saw that, but yeah, I know.
Yeah, I still see it sometimes, and it's funny because you know they don't work. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
but yeah, Billy, time for dinner, or you know there'll be one
Just
on the
like
front porch, so the whoever's at the
this
door.
is really old, but you see it in movies a lot, like horror movies especially. Is houses with a dumbwaiter, right? How cool is a
Oh yeah,
dumbwaiter?
oh,
Those
I
are
think it's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
Works well in
I
horror
live.
movies too.
Yep. Like I said, they use it a lot in horror movies. Back in October, I watched Halloween H2O, and there's a dumbwaiter there at the school that they're at. Maybe not the best example, but it's the most recent one I can think of. Or the most recent one I saw.
Did you watch Legend of Hill House,
No.
the Netflix show?
I watched
No?
like the first episode.
That
And I
that is
forgot
a
about it.
pretty, you know, the dumbwaiter plays a pretty big part in that.
I mean, I read the book.
Sure.
I should watch
Yeah.
the thing. I remember something. I can't remember why. There was like some lesbian scene, and it bummed me out. Not that I have anything against lesbians, and I was just like, I don't want to watch this right now. I don't know. Maybe it made me feel lonely and horny or something. I don't know. I just remember there was some flashback to like a couple of girls getting on. I was like, what? This isn't what I signed up for. I don't know.
I got a little bit of
I should go back
I
and
wasn't complaining, but
it's hard to explain. It's not like I don't want to give the wrong impression. Like, gay stuff. That's not what I mean. I mean, I don't think I wanted to be reminded of sex and relationships at that time or something. It was more
and
that
one was Asian, for God's sake.
and one was there you go. There's my trigger. Yeah, so maybe it gave me a flashback to an Asian girlfriend. That's probably what it was. Yeah, so I don't want to get the wrong thing out there. It's like I saw this gay scene and it bummed me out. Like, that's not what I mean. It has nothing to do with those two women. Or two men, or whatever. Speaking of two men, it's kind of funny. I finally got to watch Gorgeous, which I bought. That's a whole saga I won't talk about, but I bought it a few days ago. I finally watched it today. And I knew Tony Leung was in it, but Tony Leung's in it as a gay guy. And it's so weird how China, like a 1999 movie from China with Jackie Chan, like there's nothing homophobic in it. But it's just sort of awkward. Like, mostly the joke is just like, it's Tony Leung. Remember Tony Leung? Can you believe he's playing a gay guy? Isn't that hilarious? Yes. I mean, yeah, in some ways he is a kind of over the top here, you know, stereotypical, but in other ways he's not. And he is like a good character. Like, he's a helpful, useful character. So it's an interesting movie from a lot of perspectives. Like, one thing, like, it's in many ways Jackie's not the main character. Shu Qi is the main character. Like, it's more about her, and he's like the one she does fall in love with. It's also interesting too that, like, you know, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing Shu Qi, this 1999 Shu Qi, and it's interesting because, again, people who know me or watch the show know I'm a goddamn sex offender, and it's just like, you know, the younger the better. But I'll say, like, right here, Shu Qi is very young in that she hasn't quite become the beautiful woman that she'd be just a couple years later. Now, don't get me wrong, Shu Qi is absolutely beautiful in this movie, but she doesn't have that sort of, like, I guess, more mature, sort of smoldering, sultry sexiness that you would have within just 2 or 3 years, like you see something like even Transporter. Like, in this movie, she very much is sort of like a girl next door, country girl, small town girl who's beautiful, but she hasn't quite, she's just a bit too young. It's interesting. I guess it just surprised me. because I was just like, yeah, she actually looks a little better a few years later. Not that she doesn't look great in this movie. There's a part of where she goes on a date with him where she wears this amazing dress and she looks like she's from a fairy tale. But anyway, it's a very different movie too because it's like a romantic comedy movie. I mean, Jackie does fights and stuff, but one of the things is like the bad guys in this movie aren't the typical bad guys. Like in most movies, Jackie's fighting for his life. Like girls are very willing to kill him. In this, he's never fighting for his life. Like his fights with Brad Allen are just like arranged fights. Like Brad Allen's not a bad guy. He's a guy that was hired and wants to have a good fight. Just bums me out so much that Brad Allen's dead, but that's his best work. I mean, he's done tons, or at least his best on-camera work. But anyway, I've talked about him before. Australian martial artist, passed away a few years ago at the age of 46. And, well, he hasn't done much on-camera stuff that most people would have seen. That's the most. But, I mean, fight choreography, oh my God, his fingerprints are all over so many movies. Like, you watched, even up to, like, I think he died before Shang-Chi came out, but he was involved in Shang-Chi. Of course, if you watch Kick-Ass, the 2 Kick-Ass movies, or the Kingsman movies, you know, he was the fight choreographer on all those.
Great choreography in those.
Scott Pilgrim, you know, the fights in that's him too. Great stuff. I don't know what he died of. Some illness. It's really sad. I think he had a couple kids too, a couple daughters, something like that. So it's really sad. But I mean, this is I think his most high profile on screen work. And I mean, he was phenomenally talented, really fast and really agile. Small guy, noticeably smaller than Jackie, which is, you know, kind of a rarity in movies. But like, he can move. On one of some of my other movies, I don't even remember what it is. He's not actually in the movie, but like on the extras, there's like a stunt reel thing where he does like a fight scene. Fuck, he's good. Anyway, really sad. But I was surprised by how fast Jackie is in that movie. That's 1999. Jackie's like about 44, 45, and he's keeping up with him well. I'm waiting for 2004's New Police Story so I can get that. I think that's probably his last really good movie as far as being able to like really push himself and to be really fast, and you know, because I think after that he was still, obviously he's Jackie Chan. He still did stuff throughout the 2000s, 2010s even, but you see he slowed down, wasn't doing quite the extreme stuff. I'd say maybe the last ever thing he did where he was almost like peak was New Police Story from 2004. He's got some great fight scenes against crap, I need to look up his name so I can always find a way to shoehorn martial arts movies into stuff, even Brazil. But we bring up Asians. Asians, that's all it takes. Asians fighting Jackie Chan. But Andy On. So Andy On is actually an American-born guy, Chinese, and he'd be 46 now. So he was like more than 20 years younger than Jackie. Jackie's 50 in that movie, and he and Andy On have a couple really great fight scenes. And, you know, I can't find a lot of information exactly on Andy On, what exactly his martial arts journey was. But the way I'm putting it together, it reads like he had no training growing up and that he basically got picked for his look to be in the Black Mask movie with Jet Li and then the Black Mask 2. He had no martial arts background at all. And then he actually trained at the Shaolin Temple. And all I can figure is either the Shaolin Temple is goddamn amazing or Andy On is some kind of fucking phenom. Because within like 2 years, like this, like watch those fight scenes with Jackie. He's pulling off crazy flashy kicks and stuff. I'm thinking, he must have been some kind of goddamn prodigy.
Just a natural talent. I mean, probably like whatever, you know, a guy like that, whatever they choose to do, they're going to be good at, you know.
Like, it seems that way. And I mean, physically. He has kept up doing action movies. And actually, the last movie he did was the Jackie Chan film Ride On, which I haven't seen yet, but that's Jackie's newest movie. I don't know if you know that, Ride On?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, it just came out. It's interesting. It looks really. I have no idea exactly what it's about, but Jackie plays a stunt guy, but it's called Ride On because it's also about a horse, and he like works with a horse. I don't know, but it looks cool, and I'm interested in it. But apparently, Andy On's in that. But yeah, Andy On's been in quite a few movies, including other action movies, but I've never really seen any scenes or any, and maybe I'm just missing stuff, but that rival the crazy fight scenes he does with Jackie in that movie. By the way, he's in the movie La Lingerie, which has Shu-Chi. Or no, that's not Shu-Chi. I'm mixing things up again. Who am I thinking is Shu-Chi? Yeah, Shu-Chi's not in La Lingerie. Sorry. She's in a movie kind of that has a poster kind of like that, though. That must be why. Which is some sort of weird comedy with girls, as you expect. It's the sequel to the film La Brazier.
I've heard of that one. I mean, I've heard of the
have you?
Lingerie one as well, but I haven't seen either.
Anyway, I hope that a good release of new police stories coming out soon. Of course, they haven't done one yet for First Strike that I'm aware of, so I guess that would happen first because they just recently, they did the big box set, which I didn't get. I bought them filmed separately of the first 3 police stories. Mm-hmm. Instead, I own the first 2 police stories in Region A. I own the Criterion edition of that, but now I own the Region B version of Super Cop, even though there is a Region A release that came out like 2 months later that I could have just waited for. But anyway, so we'll see.
I hate when that happens.
That happened to be a bunch, but I don't mind. At least it gives me something to do with them. So yeah, so like most of my Hong Kong action movies are like split down the middle. Like a bunch of them are just British ones, particularly Eureka. Like if it's a Eureka release, that's fine because there's no equivalent. But the difference is sometimes movies that are released by Eureka just get 88 films released. That's what happened with the series, in the Line of Duty series. I dutifully bought, the first 2 separately. Then the other 2 I did buy together. But, they're all 4 separately. And then, like, as soon as all 4 were done, they were released as a box set in Region A by 88 Films, which would have been better, I guess. But oh well. The important thing is I have the movies. I still have a whole bunch have popped up lately. I don't have the money. I can't buy them fast enough, but there's several. Wow. The Inspector Wears Skirts is coming out, which I got to see about a little over a year ago because it was on Tubi of all things. That's less of an action movie. It doesn't have much action in it at all, but I don't care because I love Sibel Hu, and she's the star of that. You would like the movie. It's basically a Chinese version of Police Academy with a focus on the women because it's about, women police recruits, training. Cynthia Rothrock's in it at the very beginning, and then she disappears and then comes back for the end. So she's just sort of in it, but she's not. But it's about Sibel Hu training a whole bunch of female cadets, and it's more or less a comedy. Hell, it has a goddamn right in the middle. There's a whole like musical number at a roller rink. It's pretty funny. And I mean, it also shows how mirthless they are too about certain things. Like one of the cadets is like slightly chunky. Like barely at all, and they're all like calling her fat ass all the time as if she weighs like 300 pounds because that's what it's like.
Yeah.
But anyway, that movie doesn't have much action. It has some action at the very beginning, which like the opening action is great. Like Sibel Hu and Cynthia Rothrock kick ass against these terrorists. One guy gets pulled up a flagpole and blown up. It's amazing. And then the movie just turns into like a crazy like Police Academy comedy. And then it ends with some more action. So a lot of people, they can skip it, but I really enjoy it. So I'm definitely going to get it. But there's definitely some others. There's the sequel to, I mean, it's one of those sequel kind of in name only, but Hard Boiled, which looks amazing. A couple others. There's at least 3 or 4, but I'll have to wait till at least January before I can set my sights on any of them. It's not like I haven't gotten things, because like I said, I just finally got Gorgeous after all that time. Although I bought that in person because Amazon, anyway, we're not going to talk about that. Let's just say Amazon totally let me down, and I'm really upset about that. But moving on.
Hey, let me backtrack real quick before you start again. When I said that the floor was full of garbage, I think that was just a bunch of ducks is what I thought was trash. Because I just saw the scene again, and I think it's just a bunch of ducks that have been cut through.
Okay. Well, they do put trash in other places, though. They do. Maybe not between the floors, but you do see trash all over the place just to, again, let you know that this is a really decaying, messed up place full of pollution and trash and problems. But, yeah. Did I show
pollution, trash, and problems, you say? That sounds like the world we live in.
Because here's the movie.
You got the physical. Nice.
Yeah. I own a lot of movies. I mean, not compared to somebody like Jay and other people, but I own a lot of movies, but this is one of my most prized. If I could only keep like 10, this is on there. Obviously, I don't own a lot of Criterions.
If they were cheaper, I would own a lot more. I promise you. I have a handful.
Yeah, I have a handful too. And some of them are the cheaper ones, but because they're not because some of them are like international ones that you can't find. Actually, one of them, I don't know how much it would have cost. I got it secondhand. We did a whole video on it, a whole episode on it. It was our last episode of the Masters of Film. It was our Ozu episode. It was late spring. I have the late spring Criterion, but I actually got that at Video Difference, the video store here, when it was going out of business. So I don't know how much that would normally cost, but there's a few like that. Like I also have a couple really lesser known, and these aren't Blu-ray, they're DVD. There's one, I think I talked about it before. What the fuck's it called? Oh, it's a 60s Japanese movie called Fighting Elegy. I got a DVD of that. Like that wouldn't cost the way most Criterions would. I'm glad to have it, but it's really nothing to write home about. It's a really weird, awkward movie. But a guy that's horny and you can't have sex, so he fights all the time. It's pretty funny. It also doesn't really have an ending. It just sort of stops. Some of those movies are like, we don't know what we're doing, but it's over. But thinking about a lot of Japanese cinema from the 50s and 60s lately, but we just did a Japanese movie, so we'll give some time to breathe before we come back to
Cole's exact words were, I don't want to do any more of that Asian bullshit, so stop suggesting it.
Yeah. Because everybody knows how much I hate that. Yeah, that and lesbians. Goddamn lesbians make me sick. Oh man.
I was looking to see if Criterion had put that out on 4K yet, but just Time Bandit so far.
Yeah,
on
that's
the 4K
weird.
release. So
isn't it weird how slow they are with the 4K releases? Like they waited
got on
like
board.
4K. Yeah, 4K had been out for like 4 years before they released any. Which makes me wonder, like, do they plan to just stop? Because that would suck.
They kind of do what they want over there, so I'm not surprised. But I mean, surely even 4 years ago, the writing would have been on the wall, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get why the movies cost so much because it's only a small percentage of people that actually buy them. I get that. Still, though, I mean, it's a minimum $50 for me for everyone. More really with tax on top of it.
I'll pay it for the ones I have to have. I'll pay it, but
I mean, I don't own any of the Cronenberg ones, and that really bothers me.
That's the ones I have. A few of those.
Yeah, I know he's your favorites, but I mean, he's one of my favorites. He's up there, and I don't have any. This goes back to even before Blu-ray. Like I used to constantly look at another episode we did, Videodrome one. Like I had that in my hands so many times and didn't buy it. Now it's like, now's the time to get it. So I don't know. I should.
I was waiting for Crimes of the Future to get released on 4K. I think it may have been announced because at first they just put it out on Blu-ray for some reason, and I knew it was going to come out in 4K, so I was just going to try to wait because I do want to buy it, because I like it a lot. But
I didn't like it as much as I wanted to. I do like it, and I should see it again. I've only seen it once.
Me too, but it's so Cronenberg. Like he's like,
it's the most Cronenberg of all his movies. Yeah, he's just like everything I've done in all the other movies put together in one movie, basically.
Which I love, but it doesn't exactly translate into his best movie or anything. But
and by the way, speaking of Fighting Elegy, it also just stops. Like there's no ending to Crimes of the Future.
Yeah.
Like I was shocked when it ended. I was like, that's the end. Wait, like nothing felt resolved or like I don't know. I was really surprised. It felt like a really abrupt, non-ending type of ending. But
I think there was a lot of problems on that production.
Too bad.
But
yeah, actually, I liked Infinity Pool more. I know that's not him. I know that's his son. But Infinity Pool is pretty cool.
I did get that one on 4K.
Oh, yeah?
I got Infinity Pool and Possessor. Possessor was my first 4K that I bought before I had a player, so I haven't actually watched it on the 4K yet. I've only seen the Blu-ray version, so I have to remedy that.
I love Possessor. That might be the last time I was so happy in the theater.
Man. When I saw Antiviral, I don't think I knew that it was Cronenberg's son. I mean, I'm sure I put it together when I saw the credits, but
Yeah.
I was like, this guy is going places, you know, and
Yeah.
he's got it, you know. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Possessor
normally
seems
encourage
just
the son of such a popular director to pursue that, because generally it doesn't end well. But dude's talented.
Possessor. I mean, you would swear it was David Cronenberg, Possessor.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You could either say it's a good thing or not, like that he can mimic his father so well. I don't know. He probably brings his own voice to things. I don't know.
I don't care what he's doing. I like it.
Yeah, I like that he's carrying on that, so I'm fine with it. And I'm impressed that David, at his age, is still put out a new movie.
He's still working, as far as I know, which is good. I know his wife passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, which is that Brandon's mother, the lady he was married to? I assume it probably was.
I think
Who was
so.
the set designer on most of his movies, or
okay.
costume designer, costumes.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, here's something I need to look up. I need to check something for Crimes of the Future really quick. Crimes of the Future. Yeah, the music's by Howard Shore. So Howard Shore is still doing the music with him, which I think is great. Because Howard Shore, was with him from the very beginning. But he moved on and did other things. And I mean, biggest of all, Howard Shore is the composer for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is just not just such a big famous. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing soundtrack. I mean, it's practically perfect. I'm not a super duper fan of those movies. I love them, but I do have because I'm a big book purist. I do have some issues, but I mean, they are a phenomenon. What they are, like, we'll never probably see movies like them again. And the music is just one of those things that was perfect. And Howard Shore, I mean, I'm not sure how they arrived at Howard Shore, but he was the right guy for the job. Because holy fuck, wonderful music. But it's not like he did that and was just like, I don't need David Cronenberg anymore. So I'm glad, they're obviously probably good friends and that he continues to score his movies.
Well, David wasn't working a whole lot either. I mean, as far as features go.
I mean, during that time?
Yeah. I mean, well, he did, was it Existence, which that got a 4K that I need.
I mean, Existence is at 99?
I believe so.
So that's around the time that Shore would have started probably working on Lord of the Rings, because that had a super long production time, right? Plus, they did all the movies back to back. So, between like 99, 2002, 2003, Shore would have been composing and putting together the music for that soundtrack. Spider was 2002.
I forgot about Spider, yeah.
I always remember Spider. It's not one I like that much, but it's like I saw that in the theater. That's the very first time I ever went to the Atlantic Film Festival. It was my first year of university, and I saw Spider, which is pretty cool. Back then, I knew who David Cronenberg was, but it wasn't quite the same. I hadn't quite yet become the super fan I would become. But so that movie's always special to me because it's one of the only ones of his I got to see in the theater. I mean, some of the ones I saw were less his thing. They were they were good. Things like a History of Violence. Saw that in the theater. Very good movie, but
I love those movies. They're supposed to be doing either a sequel or prequel or something to Eastern Promises at some point. So hopefully you can finish that.
Yeah, that would be great.
But I love the action movies that he does. I think they're wonderful, but they're not. They don't have the Cronenberg stank on it that I love so much.
No, I like the ones he writes. The ones he writes himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the body horror. I mean, we've done several of movies, but there's always room to do more. What have we done?
More.
We've done.
We'll do more.
We did The Brood, right?
We did The Brood, Videodrome.
Videodrome. At least one more, I want to say.
Yeah, we've done more.
Sure, we've done at least one more. Did we do what's the word? Rabbit? Did we do Rabbit?
I don't believe so.
We didn't do Rabbit. I think I might have just watched Rabbit around the same time that I watched The Brood for when we did The Brood. And we didn't do Rabbit, huh? I
You
almost
know
could have been fooled into thinking we did.
the Saska sisters of all people did a remake of that. That I don't think people even know that came out.
I didn't know that came out.
Not good. It's worth a watch just to see how bad it is.
Well, I'll ask you this: have you watched any of the show of that they made for what the other one that for sure we did, Dead Ringers? You watched the Dead Ringers show?
They made a show out of that, huh? No,
Yeah,
aren't they female in this or
it's
something?
with I think it's Rachel Weisz. I think it's Rachel
Oh,
Weisz.
okay. I didn't even know that existed until I saw it, like just scrolling one day on streaming. And,
Yeah, it's on like Prime, I think, for me, and I plan to watch it. I just
I'll give it a shot.
I've heard good things about Rachel Weisz's performance, so
I like her.
sounds interesting.
So.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
I'm sure it's going to be me complaining that it's not. This isn't Cronenberg at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's always weird when they make shows based on movies. To me, I don't know. I can't think of any show based on a movie that I thought was really great.
Series seems to be the way to go now. I don't know why, but they take subject matter and stretch it out beyond belief to make, whatever number of episodes they're shooting for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot of filler, in my opinion, of a lot of that stuff.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, like, during like COVID, because I always blabber, and I'm not much of a shows guy. I don't really watch shows the way some people do. Like during COVID was when I really tried to watch some shows, and that's how I felt like with a lot of them. I'd watch 8 episodes, and I was like, that could have been like 4 episodes.
Especially American television, they want a number. I mean, I guess we're moving away from that formula now, but network television wanted 24 episodes, but that's what I like about, BBC and stuff. It'll be, some seasons may have 9, some seasons may have 6. And, you are seeing a little bit of that coming over here, but.
Yeah. I mean, I like a miniseries if it's tight.
But if you've got a solid 7 episodes, let's keep it at 7. Let's not string that out to 8,
Yeah. I mean, the new Fargo is finally going to start soon. Or has it started? I'm interested in that.
Oh,
speaking, because I just thought of shows based on movies, because I'm thinking like I like the show more than the movie. I mean, not all of it, but for me it was the second season. I mean, I liked all 3 seasons; they were all good, but I really liked the second season. And now this 4th season, it seems like it's up north somewhere.
Trying to remember.
Or no, they're all in this. Wait a minute, what am I saying? They're all on the same. Oh, you know what's up north somewhere? This is what I'm mixing up. I'm mixing 2 things up. Obviously, it's up north, but there's another show that they're putting up north, and that's the new True Detective. The new True Detective's in Alaska. Oh, you knew that? Okay.
No, I didn't know that, but I'm looking forward to whatever they decide.
It's in Alaska. I already saw a little preview for it because that's coming out maybe in January. So those are 2 things I'm looking forward to. And in Fargo's case, that is a show based on a movie that I do think is good. So,
was the second season with the one with Kirsten Dunst plays the wife that hits the guy that is the it has the weird like farmers. Yes. There's some sort of weird. Okay, the brothers.
Yeah. I like it because it has like a kind of like almost sort of like a gang war going on in it. It's like the 2 sort of crime families fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Kirsten Dunst is in there. In that one, isn't Kirsten Dunst married to that guy that looks like a really fatted out Matt Damon?
Oh, in the movie, yeah. That guy's a great Jesse Pinkman.
I have no idea what his name is, because I was just thinking, because a couple months ago, the last time I was in Sydney, I watched the show, and it's funny because there's 2 shows based on this same thing that came out with. I didn't watch one of them. One's called Candy. That's the one I didn't watch. But then there was one called something Love. Anyway, it was about that real life case in Texas in the early 80s of this woman that had an affair.
Oh yeah.
And then she wound up killing the wife of the guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I watched that show, and in that one, Love something love. It's Olsen, Elizabeth Olsen. It's Elizabeth Olsen, and the guy she cheats with is that guy. And I'm just like, what? Because like in real life, they were just sort of ordinary, unattractive people. But in this, you have Elizabeth Olsen. It's like this beautiful woman, and she's like, she says to him like the first time, she's like, "I'm really attracted to you." I'm like, what? What kind of casting is this? Like he's cast like a normal guy, but she's beautiful. I don't know.
I want to get this
life,
guy's
the actual
name
woman
because
was not beautiful.
Yeah, I saw one of those too. I don't know which one. I think I may have seen the other one.
Yeah, the other one's called I think Candy, and it's on I guess maybe Hulu because it's on Disney Plus for me.
That's Jessica Biel. No, yeah, Jessica Biel, I believe.
Okay. So I was kind of interested to maybe watch the other one just to compare and contrast because they're about the exact same events. So it'd be interesting to see how they compare to each other. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Like the guy was, this guy, and yet the woman was, Elizabeth Olsen, who's so pretty, which is more normal. Like that's what you do in movies, even if it's based on a true story. You get much more attractive. My favorite version of that probably is The Conjuring Part 2. The Conjuring Part 2 is the one that takes place over in London.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one? They go over to London. Remember how the movie ends like with the credits, so it shows photos of the actual people?
Yeah.
My God, that was one ugly family. Like the woman, the kid, these are young children. I hate to say it, but they were ugly as hell children. Like they probably saw the pictures and were like, oh my God, we have to pretty this up, and cast some nice looking child actors and the woman and stuff like that. But oh my God, the pictures, you're just like, Jesus. This is 70s London. They look like they lived through the Black Plague or something.
They got Charlize Theron to play, Warnos, who looks like a old fucking used up wallet.
They did ugly her up though.
They uglied her up, but I'm just saying, like,
because that's like when we've had this discussion. That's like the best thing a woman can do if they want like awards and stuff. It's like, I'm a beautiful woman, but I'm willing to go ugly for a role. And, people fall all over themselves for that. Like, fucking Nicole Kidman wore a fake nose in The Hours, and everyone was like, oh, she was so fantastic in that.
She's so brave.
Like, no, she wasn't. She just wore a fake nose. It had nothing to do with her goddamn performance. But they love that. Like, as I said, there's two things, and most of the time it has to do with being based on real characters, but not always. Like, either play somebody in real life who is ugly and be ugly, or play somebody who's, like, absolutely insane. That's what awards people like. Play a Hannibal Lecter, or play the guy that had, like, weird mental problems in A Beautiful Mind. In fact, we'll play them up and make them even weirder, because in real life, yeah, the guy had mental problems, but he didn't hallucinate entire people, which is what they make him do in A Beautiful Mind. Remember we were talking about Paul Bettany a while ago? You couldn't really place him. Paul Bettany is a guy that he entirely hallucinates in that movie. Paul Bettany's role is an imaginary person. Just some guy that he hallucinates because he's insane, apparently. But in real life, he wasn't that crazy, I don't even like to use that word, but I just mean they make him like a lunatic in the movie. He's hallucinating entire people. But anyway, super overrated. But that's what I said. Yeah. These are the type of movies that people love. Like, yeah.
Another good example of that would be Brendan Fraser in The Fat
Movie. The Whale.
Yeah, The Whale.
I liked The Whale. I probably would never watch it again, but it was a good watch.
I liked it a lot, and I don't know. I've heard people say it was terrible, and he was super fat, and this is not people I know, But
well, he wasn't really super fat. What do they think? He gained 400 pounds for a role.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's someone watched like the first 10 minutes and turned it off, and then gave an opinion based on that, which I think is a lot of reviews you see online.
Well, they can't complain about him being super fat. That's the entire point of the role. Right. He's a super fat guy. I mean, if you don't want to watch a movie about that, I get it. It's kind of gross, but I mean.
But it's like, his agent's like, hey, Brandon, I got it. You're going to be super fat in this one. We're going to be back in business, buddy.
I mean, I'm glad he got a lot of acclaim. We've talked about him before. Sure. He's a real nice guy who had a hard time. Like people were like, he kind of disappeared in the 2000s after a while. I was like, yeah, he did. and he was actually super depressed for a long time. And like back when they did Superman Returns, he was up for the role and he didn't get it, and that hit him really hard. Like that was.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It probably wouldn't have turned out great if he'd got it anyway. You know, that movie
It's a terrible movie, so I'm glad he wasn't in it. And Brandon Routh wasn't badly cast; it was just a terrible movie. But it just he was a guy like it just again. I don't try to pretend to know these people or anything like that, but I mean, in the case of somebody like Brandon Fraser, who was a good-looking guy, a well-known, popular actor, but still he put a lot of pressure on himself, and he felt really bad about certain things and the way his career was turning out for a while. Not just that role, there were other things going on too. I think his marriage fell apart. He's human. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I just remember reading a really long a really long article about him. And the interviewer had been talking to him. They were doing some sort of show. What's funny is, remember that a couple of years ago they did that movie All the Money in the World? And it was about, again, it was based on a true story. It was about the Italian billionaire. Remember his like nephew or something? Somebody in his family gets kidnapped.
Okay.
Apparently around the same time, they actually made a show of that. And Brendan Fraser was on that show. I don't know who the hell he played or what it was. But anyway, that was the show where, remember at the time where everybody was getting Kevin Spacey got recast? That was the show where Kevin Spacey got recast by, I think, I want to say of all people, who's that guy? He's Canadian. He's really old. It's weird because he's much older than Kevin Spacey. I was getting mixed up with Peter O'Toole. It's not Peter O'Toole. It's the other one. He's a bit younger than Peter O'Toole. Holy fuck, he was in The Sound of Music. He's old, blue eyes. You know him. He's super well known. I thought The Sound of Music would give it, but
I'm not a musical guy.
Yeah, but that transcends.
I probably should know.
Okay, it's fine because I'm blanking on a name again. Okay, for fuck's sake, Christopher Plummer.
Okay.
So anyway, the point is that show that Brendan Fraser was on, I don't remember what it was called, but it was the same plot as All the Money in the World. It was about that thing. And originally it was going to be Kevin Spacey. And that was the time that everybody was like, uh-oh, Kevin Spacey's a supervillain for real. Get rid of him. And they recast him as Christopher Plummer, which makes a lot more sense anyway, because I'm thinking Christopher Plummer's who just passed away a couple years ago. But anyway, wonderful actor.
Well, I do declare I'm in this new movie, y'all.
Canadian icon.
Kevin Spacey.
But I'm just thinking Kevin Spacey would have been too young for that role. So it seems weird, like, at the last minute, they're like, oh, we have to get rid of Kevin Spacey. He's canceled. Get Christopher Plummer. It's like, why didn't you get Christopher Plummer all along? Isn't Kevin Spacey, like, too young for this role? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But anyway, whatever the fuck that show was.
I think he's older than you think he is.
Yeah, but he's not Christopher Plummer old. Christopher Plummer was born in 1929. He'd be 93 if he was still alive. He was 91 when he died. So he's got to be at least 20 years older than Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey might be like 70, but
he's 63, I think. 64.
So yeah, that's way younger. And again, too young for that role. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Whatever the fuck that show was, Brendan Fraser apparently was on it. And that was anyway, I don't even remember how I found the article. You just find things on the internet. But it was on the set of that he got that interview. And I found out all this stuff about sort of what he'd been going through over those last few years. Like, I didn't know. And I felt really bad about it. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people felt better. Oh, I'm mixing that up again. So no, that was only for the movie. So it wasn't the show. God damn it. So it was the show where he was recast. So it has nothing to do with Brendan Fraser, except that it was the same plot. Oh, look, there goes my camera again.
He was in that DC show.
Oh, yeah. Doom Patrol?
Doom Patrol, yeah. I knew Doom was in the name. Which I have not seen. And they had a bunch of series that didn't do well. I know Swamp Thing. I tried to get into
Doom Patrol. I watched the first, I watched at least the first season and maybe some of the second season of Titans, which is horrible, by the way. And one of the episodes basically introduces all the Doom Patrol characters, so I already knew. because they were on that before they were on their own show, so I already knew. So I was just like, no, I don't know. But Doom Patrol is one of those super out there, weirdo, outsider comics that a lot of people really enjoy, but was not for me. Nothing wrong with it. Just, I mean, it was a groundbreaking comic back in the day. It was pretty different from other superhero stuff. It just was never something I got into. Oh, God damn it. I think around that time, Gerard Way might have been writing the newest version of that. If you don't remember the name Gerard Way, that's the lead singer from My Chemical Romance.
Oh, okay.
Don't you hate it when people are that talented? For God's sakes, just you don't need to be a comic book writer too, you asshole.
He was what, the Umbrella Academy was him?
Yeah, that was him. Yeah. But I don't even know if it still exists, but for around like 2016, 2017 or something, DC did this other imprint called Young Animal, and he was like part of that. I don't even know if that's still around. But I think Doom Patrol was on it. At least a couple of them were on it. Maybe Doom Patrol wasn't, but Shade the Invisible Man was, or Shade the something man was on it, and so I don't know, some other stuff. Doesn't matter. But yeah, Umbrella Academy was entirely his. Well, not entirely, whoever the artist was too, but I just mean he was the writer for that. Fuck's sake. Stupid.
Jacob has a question for you here.
Oh, hold on, I can't see anything.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Yeah, I can
the Umbrella Academy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, Brubaker. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a good thing to be adapted. Most stuff Brubaker does is really adaptable. It almost feels like he writes with that in mind. Like he's not a big, huge, twisty, turnery. You know, he's not like, I don't know. I can't remember. It's not like Jonathan Hickman or something. I know some of the stuff I'm saying is too inside baseball for non-comic fans, but I'm just saying Brubaker's stuff is highly adaptable. So I think it could be fine. I have not read all of Criminal. I've read some of Criminal. I sometimes get it mixed up with 100 Bullets, so don't kill me for that. I just do. I know they are different things. But yeah, I think a lot of stuff Brubaker does lends itself well to adaptation, a lot more so than a lot of comic stuff. So I think it could probably be good, but I'm not like a genuine fan of that. So I don't know, maybe genuine fans of it would have concerns. I am a big Brubaker fan. Just most of the stuff by him he does I like is more like, you know, Marvel DC stuff. Not that I don't like his original stuff, like his own creations. It's good, but you know, I like him for Daredevil and Iron Fist, and of course, something that should have been adapted, but it's too late now, and they already ruined everything. Gotham Central. Like, why the fuck couldn't they made a Gotham Central show? That would have been perfect. Instead, they make Gotham, which was crap. I mean, Gotham Central was so adaptable that you could have literally taken its storylines and just dumped them onto the TV. But yeah, he's definitely one of the better Daredevil writers, even though he didn't have that long run on it. And he had a tough job, too, because he was the first writer after that super long Bendis run. Like, it's not easy to be the first writer after somebody wrote a series for like 6-7 years, and Brubaker had to do that. Plus, he's also the first writer that made me give a damn about Captain America. Like, people, of course, now because of the movies, they know who the Winter Soldier is and all that. Well, he's the one that invented Winter Soldier and brought all that. He's the one that changed the Captain America comic, which I never cared much about. And again, I didn't collect it at the time or anything, but he changed it into the more kind of international espionage spy type thing, thriller stuff. And I do think that bringing Bucky back is one of the great resurrections in comics. Like, most of the time I complain. I'm like, let this character stay dead for Christ's sake. But I really like Winter Soldier a lot. And I think he's actually one of the better characters in the MCU. I like Sebastian Stan, or whatever his name is. I think he's done really well. Excuse me.
That's Bucky, right? That's the guy who plays Bucky.
That's Bucky, yeah. Winter Soldier, Bucky, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've always really liked the storyline, which is slightly tweaked for MCU. In MCU, they make it Hydra. In the In the comics, it's just Russians. It's, he was brought back by the Russians. He was a Russian agent for all those years. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is the thing. But yeah, but really good. So, I mean, Brubaker for a long time, has been one of my favorite writers. I haven't paid much attention to what he's doing lately. Like I said, I'm not as interested in his non-superhero stuff, although it's not like it's not good. So yeah, I think Criminal could be good. But yeah, he's a crime guy. He's a crime noir guy. Like that's his element. That's why he slips so well into something like Batman. Jacob, did you read did you read The Man Who is it called The Man Who Laughs? Yeah, The Man Who Laughs, the Batman story that's the reimagining of his first meeting with Joker? Because that's really good. I've got that. Yeah, The Man Who Laughs. That's what it is. In fact, they just recently redid that again. Actually, I have it right here. Do I? Yeah. So there's a series called Batman the Brave and the Bold. Here's the first one, and they're thick. They're expensive as hell. And they're anthologies. They're anthology series. They're multiple stories within the same thing. But the first story, The Winning Card, written by Tom King, it's once again, it's yet another reimagining of that.
That looks expensive. The prices of comics is ridiculous now, man.
This is super expensive. This is $7.99 American, so that's well over $10 Canadian. But I mean, they have they're not full of. I mean, there's no ads, so that's good. There's no ads. It's higher quality. They are thick. So I mean, it's not like you're not paying for it. You're not getting. The main reason I started getting was just because of that. Was because even though it's only one of the stories going on, I was really interested in that really grisly story. It all goes back to Batman #1. Whereas people don't remember Joker's first appearance. It's really simple. It's the Joker would appear on the radio as this scary voice saying, "This prominent citizen will die at midnight. The Joker has spoken," and then he would kill them in creative ways until Batman could finally figure it out and stop him. A really iconic first appearance for anybody because it really set the tone for what Joker was, and they water him down later because of the comic code and all that shit. But he started off as a very scary, dark murderer right off the bat in the original 1940 comic. Batman #1 is pretty crazy. First appearance of the Joker and Catwoman. Oh, we were just talking about how that we're interested in it, but I haven't started. So it's already out. Okay, I knew it was coming out soon. But yeah, I
didn't know it was out already.
On this show thing, I was saying that I was looking forward to it. Just like the new True Detective, I'm interested in, which is in Alaska, which is pretty cool.
And Jodie Foster is in there.
Yes, that's right. I don't know the other actress. There's a black actress there. Maybe people would know her because they know TV if she's a TV person, but I don't. So I don't know her. But anyway, we'll see. Anyway, I don't want to make this too long, so we will wrap up on Brazil, and then we can finish up. So I don't know. It's funny, like Jay had pointed out, like it was kind of a shorter notice what we decided on this particular movie, and Jay had just pointed out how it was a longer movie and hard to do multiple watches of. And I guess I knew that in the back of my mind because I know the movie so well, but I guess it just didn't occur to me at the time that it's well over 2 hours. It's about 2 hours, 25 minutes, something like that. Whatever 143 minutes is there, do the math. But I guess it didn't occur to me at the time, but I guess it's just because I like the movie so much. It certainly doesn't feel long to me. I love the setup. I love everything. I don't feel like anything's wasted or needs to be trimmed. And when I think about back in the 80s when the studio releasing it in America insisted on cutting out all that stuff, it just makes me mad. So I can't imagine how Terry Gilliam must have felt at the time. I mean, I know he was upset and he petitioned United or whoever to release the proper cut, and that took years. Again, this is just around the time that director's cuts were really becoming a thing, We talked about it also when we talked about Once Upon a Time in America. You know, before you got to the 90s, director's cut was not really a term that people used because they didn't get releases or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, I still love the movie. I don't watch it all the time because it is long and because it is fairly heavy subject matter, but it is surprisingly light in parts. Like the humor is really on point, really good cutting, really fits. I love the movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, so I'm kind of biased because, like I said, it's right up there. It's top 20 movie for me easily, and I love the world and I love the aesthetic, and it's not something I think that you could make today. Really, sometimes things are just lightning in a bottle at the right time. Like I said, the movie came out in 85, but it was made before that, and you know, he talked about how we were coming up on the real year 1984 and how he wanted to do something that reflected that. And as I said, it seemed like a lot of people wanted to do that when you think about some of the fiction and artwork and stuff that came out in the early 80s, particularly in Britain. And just to go back over that, I mentioned V for Vendetta by Alan Moore. Also in 2000 AD, the British comic Judge Dredd, and the Pink Floyd album The Wall. I think all those things have some stuff you can tie together in there. It's funny. Remember that Apple ad from 1984? Oh, I'm sure you've seen it. It's one of those famous ads. It's for an Apple computer. You'll have to look it up.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
With like the woman dressed like a track star and the yelling on the screen and throwing the thing into the screen. Like, yeah, because they're like 1984 is not going to be like 1984 because we're Apple and we're cool and I don't know. You know,
Was that like early 2000s or something like that?
No, this was 1984.
Oh, it was in 84. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe I've seen it.
But it's making like a. Hold on, maybe we can show it.
I'm sure we can. I'm sure it's old enough. I'll pull it up.
Okay, you'll find it.
And if they're not okay with it, I'll cut it out later.
Yeah, it's short. It's not like it's a long commercial. Might even only be 30 seconds.
All right, this is an original recording. It's got a little football going on. I'm gonna wait till that. This is terrible quality, but
there we go. Apple's Macintosh commercial, 1984. I found it. Oh, it says it's a full minute. That's longer than I remember. But yeah, it's got all the people looking at the.
This was a Super Bowl commercial, apparently.
Yeah, it was a big, big deal. Like I said, I'm too young. I wouldn't have seen it back in the day, but it's so famous that, you know.
Oh, real quick, that the other lady from True Detective is actually a boxer. So.
Not an actor?
Not an actor.
Oh, well, no wonder I didn't know her. Okay. So it's a boxer trying her hand at acting. That's interesting.
All right.
Sure, why not?
I think that's all football. So okay. I know they don't like when you show football on here, so.
Not without the express written consent of. Yeah, this is it.
Yes.
A garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of any contradictory force. The creation of the force is more powerful a weapon than any fleet.
They got some people's attention there with the running.
One resolve, one cause.
Running is good.
Oh, so much symbolism. I can't take it.
It's over my head. I don't know what they're saying.
On January 24th,
I just want to drink beer and watch people hit each other.
And you'll see why 1984 won't be
like
1984.
Nice. Nicely
done. Oh,
done.
yeah. There you go. Apple, I love high concept ads like that, especially that old, because it's just like, what the fuck does that have to do with computers? You know? I just like ads like that don't show the product or talk about what the product does or anything, but instead it's just like this is a
look. It's 1984. Next year's gonna be 85. I got to do it now.
This is a game changer for reasons we won't explain. This is a fucking paradigm shift, you know.
That's a good point, Jacob. By the way,
It's too,
I think Cole
you
and
know,
I
the guy on the
complained about that a lot.
the guy on the screen is pretty good, but no. Speaking of V for Vendetta, like I mean, I guess people can complain about the movie version, but one of the great things about the movie version is John Hurt as you know, the head guy, the guy.
I
that
do
makes
like
all the
John Hurt
speeches.
quite a bit. He was fantastic.
He's really excellent in that. I think it's a pretty good adaptation. I don't have too many problems with it. I mean, yeah, the comic's better, but I think it's not bad at all. Like Natalie Portman. But anyway, yeah. So there was a lot of stuff. I guess my point is there was a lot of stuff that had that kind of aesthetic, that sort of feel. And I think it's all because they were like, it's almost 1984, like that book. And there is stuff in the real world that makes us think about that. And in the UK, they were like, Thatcher, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But really not so settled in something like V for Vendetta, especially. But anyway, so that's one of the reasons why I think Brazil, you know, wouldn't be as good if they made it now. I don't think it would have that same feel.
It would be polished for sure. I would think.
Yeah. I mean, the movie is polished, just in a different sort of way, I guess. And if people are, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, you know, I say this a lot, but it's very much a, you know, a product of its time. Like it's a time capsule type movie because it just, you know, I love the look, you know, the way everything is, you know, just the aesthetic of everything. Like
it's one of my most favorite crafted worlds in a movie. Exactly.
Yeah, I can't think of an eloquent way to put it, but just the way things, you know, the set design, you know, the design of the guys in the, you know, the suits and stuff. I'll go ahead and tell you, you know, my thoughts of the movie real quick so you can finish up. But yeah, I didn't tell you this, but I didn't really like Brazil before I had seen it. And I am a, you know,
I think I remembered that you hadn't liked it when you were younger.
Big Gilliam fan, but you know, I know you were a huge fan of it, and I wanted to, you know, give it another shot anyway. But I did really come to enjoy it a lot more than I did, you know, previously. But you know, seeing a lot of stuff, you know, with a new set of eyes and knowing, you know, exactly what they're trying to do with things, it really did help. But yeah, it's definitely a benefit. You know, I've seen it I think 4 times now. I watched it again while we did the show. But yeah, I could definitely, you know, benefit from watching it another time because I've probably missed a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the really great things about the movie. As I said, there's so much stuff happening in the background and details and stuff that you can pick up on when you're watching it on like rewatches, things like that. Some really great rewatchability there. Because as I said, it's one of my favorite movies. I own it. I've seen it many times, and there's still stuff that like I forget or didn't pick up on or notice as much. On all levels too, like storytelling and things like that. But like I said, there were some jokes in there that maybe I probably didn't catch the first time that are, I think, really clever and biting. So yeah, I just think it's one of those rare movies where it just works on sort of every level. I don't really think it has any weak points exactly. And yet, like, it's not one of the great stories of all time or anything like that. It's just sort of the way it all comes together, I guess. Like, as you said, I'm kind of maybe lacking in eloquence how I want to express that. But I just feel like everything's just so on point. And before we finish up, for all those people wondering why is it called Brazil, it's just referencing a song that's used in the movie Aquarela do Brasil, which is a sort of famous song from was it the 30s? Yeah, 39. Anyway, I don't know what, you know, it's a Brazilian song in Portuguese, but there were some English language versions of it. I don't know what would you call the genres, like bossa nova or something like that? I don't know. Anyway,
I have no idea.
But anyway, the song is in the movie at the start and at the end. In fact, that's what he's humming after he's lost his mind. But I think the reason they decided to call it that was, one, they didn't want to like give it like some sort of monolithic title. They had several that were like way too on the nose and really related to like 1984. As he said, he wanted to do 1984 and a half at first, which I think is kind of dumb. And then they had a whole bunch of other ones that all, like, one was like the Institute and things like that. And you know, they just seemed a little, they didn't seem to have, I don't know. I just think Brazil gives it a little flair And you could, if you really want to get like delve into it, and you don't need to, but if you want some symbolism or something to do with the theme, like the idea of Brazil, the song, I think is like escapism. You have this oppressive, urban, horrible, decaying environment, but the song evokes tropical paradise and kind of that thing.
Right.
Like it's like in the same way of like the girl from Ipanema or something like that. Makes you think of something as far away from the movie as possible, something peaceful and something laid back and something free. I think that's maybe what it goes for. So that is why they eventually used Brazil as the title, which I think is good too, because I don't know. I remember like not really understanding at all why it was called Brazil and being intrigued. So whatever it takes to get people's attention and make them interested. Like I said, you don't really want a bland on the nose title anyway. It's interesting because we've talked a few times about one of our favorite film that just pops up kind of. I don't think it was ever exactly on purpose, but when you sometimes, especially in trilogies, we talk about like thematic trilogies, right? Like groups of 3 films that are not connected narratively or by story or character, but maybe some sort of theme, and we like a lot of those. And I've always been fascinated. Like Gilliam considers this sort of part of sometimes 2, because one he calls his trilogy of imagination, whereas Time Bandits is the first one.
Okay.
This is the middle one. This is the middle one.
Right?
No, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is the third.
Okay.
And he does include it also as maybe the first installment of a simple dystopian satire trilogy, with this is the first, 12 Monkeys is the second, and then The Zero Theorem from 2013 as the third. So in his, it's actually in 2 separate thematic trilogies, and it does make sense on that level.
In Zero Theorem?
Yes. It's not that good.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like him, It's kind of what we say about some of these directors. It's not even that it's not like they're not good directors anymore. It's more like whatever it was that made them feel unique doesn't seem to still be in them. I don't know. Because like we talked about directors like most recently, like Cronenberg or somebody like a John Carpenter. And of course, on the other end, well, I mean, the same idea though, it's like Terrence Malick. And I also think somebody like Gilliam himself. They're all directors where you watch like most of their movies, particularly their early movies, like within the first like few minutes, it's them because they have this sort of visual style. And I feel like for some of those guys, like that eroded over time, or maybe they just didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. And that's kind of how I felt kind of like Zero Theorem. It's kind of the same way as if you watch like, I don't know, A Dangerous Method. That's Cronenberg, right?
That's like a good movie.
It's a good movie, but it doesn't really remind you or make you really think that much about Cronenberg. Like
that almost felt like a
Zero Theorem.
That almost felt like a pet project of Cronenberg's, like something he wanted to personally do. I mean, I think it's a great movie. I mean, but you wouldn't know it's a Cronenberg movie.
No, and that's kind of what Zero Theorem's like. The feel. I wasn't super disappointed. The one I was super disappointed in, and maybe it's not even his fault, is The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Because that movie, Heath Ledger died, and that's threw everything into. But I thought I would really like the movie.
Colin Farrell took over. Is that right?
Well, several actors kick over. So what he decided to do was like make it so the character like changed. So it's like it's several. I think Johnny Depp is one. Colin Farrell's one. There's at least one other. There's 3 or 4 guys that all do it. Which sounds really interesting.
I never bothered to watch it.
I can't really recommend it because you know what? I found it kind of boring. Like I was kind of waiting for it to be over. Like it seems like a really great premise that just does not get there. So that was the one that really just disappointed me. One quick check on something and then we can finish up.
Okay, sorry. I'll start a whole new diatribe. I'll let you go ahead.
Oh no, we got time.
I was just gonna, fuck, I don't know what you said made me think of Heath Ledger, but I didn't like Heath. Oh, because of the movie. Imaginarium or whatever. But I didn't like Heath Ledger as an actor until like when he was cast as Joker, I was like, this is bullshit. I was mad. Because the Dark
I was
Knight
confused.
is one of my favorites, in all comics that I've read.
Yeah.
So, I was not happy with the casting, but goddamn, he blew me out of the water. And I think that would have been a very memorable performance had he not died, before the movie came out. So, but that it changed my opinion of the guy,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I just knew him from A Knight's Tale mostly with Paul Bettany,
I mean,
and which was the first
Patriot.
movie that he starred in.
Yeah,
And it was just like, oh, Heath Ledger's this Australian like pretty boy, you know.
exactly.
Didn't know that he could act as well as he did, but he was really good. But
Oh yeah, Monsters Ball. I forgot he was in that one. He was good in that. Yeah, Brokeback. He's great in, of course.
yeah, he's really good. Yeah,
Which
I can't
we need
remember
to
what
do on
episode
here
we
one
did.
day. We need to do Brokeback on here.
Brokeback? Yeah, I would do Brokeback.
Or Ang Lee
But,
has a new movie out now. I don't remember the name
That's
of
good.
it, but it's showing.
He did Gemini Man a couple of years ago. I was like, what are you doing?
That was
Like
garbage.
doing a Will Smith action movie? I don't want to watch that. You know, so I didn't. But yeah, that's interesting. But anyway, no, Terry Gilliam's 83 now. The last movie he did was The Man Who Killed Don Quixote from 2018, which was the movie he'd been wanting to make like his entire fucking career. Like he was I think in the early 80s wanted to make that movie. I never saw it. So I've seen all his movies except that. So I guess I should watch it because I've seen literally everything else.
Not Ang Lee.
You know,
John
I've
Woo
talked about
was in
doing
the
Fear.
movie. Sorry.
Oh, Silent Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for the Silent Night. Sounds
Getting
pretty
my Asians mixed
But,
up, guys.
because I remember it's funny looking at I'd forgotten about, of course, Fear and Loathing, which is really the first movie I really knew him for. Saw it before I saw 12 Monkeys. But you don't really like Fear and Loathing that much, do you?
Mm-mm.
I
I
can
need to
see
watch
why like it's like if somebody said it was overrated, I would get that. Because
Yeah.
I don't know if it is now, but I think I talked about this before. Like in the early 2000s, when I was really getting into movies and I was at college in the early years, there were several movies out there that just had huge, big reputations, and that was one of them. You know, there was that, and there was Fight Club and Seven, and I don't know, there are a few others, but that was one of them. Especially like college, it's like, you know, get high, watch this movie. I get it, you know, but I don't know. I still really like the movie. I guess because I've always liked the book too. I saw it before the book, but the book is really good. I am a Hunter Thompson fan.
Hunter Thompson. I was trying to think of his name. Yeah.
I do think he's a really interesting figure, and I mean Johnny Depp does nail it. Although
Yeah.
I think people forget that Bill Murray did it first, which is hilarious to me.
People do not know that. No.
And I mean, Bill Murray at that point hadn't even done acting. He did like Meatballs. Meatballs was his first movie, and then he does Where the Buffalo Roam, and he's, you know, he actually be a real person, and he does it really well. I mean, the movie's underwhelming, but there's nothing wrong with Bill Murray's performance. It's actually that good. I don't know.
I would have liked to
Fear
have
and
known what
Loathing.
Hunter Thompson thought of Fear and Loathing, honestly. Because
I think he must have liked it because he and Depp are like fucking best buddies, right? He and Depp like hung out forever till he killed himself.
that's why he did. He did it because of that movie.
He couldn't leave the lie anymore. It's like I never actually liked the movie. I had to keep telling Depp that I liked it, but no, I think it's a really good movie. Actually, it's definitely one of the criterions that I really would like to have. But anyway,
I need to watch it again. I mean, hell, we can cover it on here at some point if you'd like. I've got a lot of personal reasons why I don't like that movie, but you know.
Fair enough. All right, so that's Brazil. I could probably talk more about it because I like it so much, but we've covered the important stuff, I think. So thanks a lot for everybody, and thanks Jacob for being here. I'm gonna end with another thing. It's like, okay, so right before we wound up going on our huge hiatus, Jay had pointed something out to me, which was like, hey, we're almost at 600 subscribers. That's pretty cool. And now I've noticed in the month since we've added a bunch more. We're almost at 700 now. Did you know that? We've like we shot way past 600. Like you were talking about, we were coming up on 600. We're shot past that. So I mean, I would wish that would reflect in the views a bit more. And if you are a new viewer, that's great. But you know, don't be shy. We'd love for some comments and feedback and things like that. We're always looking for that. And as far as the other thing, I'll just say I've never done this before in the years we've done this show, but I'll do a pitch for the show right now, which is, I mean, the people watching, they already get it, but like when I watch YouTube stuff, especially about movies, I like polished stuff. I spend a lot of time watching like really well put together videos, like video essays and things like that. And I think they're great. And honestly, if I had the time and the know-how, it's something I wish I could do it. But anyway, I do think that this show has merit for a lot of reasons. And I think that even though it's it's not like that. It's not polished. There's not a lot of discussion stuff out there. A lot of the stuff I see is kind of just one person doing a thing. So I think it's good from that angle. I think Jay and I cover a lot of, even though there's only two of us, I think we cover a lot of bases. We've seen a lot of stuff between us, and we have a lot of experiences and things to draw from. Also, because we're not like a high volume show, we're not monetized or anything like that. So I mean, I watch videos where like they are so censored. It's to a level I can't even believe. Like I get, okay, they can't say this curse word or that curse word. And I get it, that's fine. But I've seen videos where like I was watching a video where a guy was doing like a documentary thing, and like he bleeped out in himself of it saying the word marijuana. I was like, you get demonetized for saying marijuana? Are you kidding me? And I've seen like videos on like TikTok through like Twitter where people couldn't say like kill or suicide. They would say stuff like unalive and things like that. Like these rules are insane. Jay and I are not bound by these fucking rules. I get it. YouTube has some rules and they can ban your channel if you do horrible things. But I mean, we're not worried about being demonetized. So we talk about rape and we talk about all sorts
they don't like that word either.
They don't like the word rape. You can't
I'll say it again.
You say child, again, you watch these videos, if they're going to talk about child pornography, they say CP. They can't even say child pornography.
They can't say pornography.
So, I mean, I mean,
so we don't have the view count to get
we don't have the view
count.
It,
so
we're not bound by that fucking shit. So we're not censored too much. I mean, there's a little bit when it comes to YouTube, but I mean nothing that constrains us. So I think that's another thing, a good reason to watch us. And I don't know. The other thing is, I mean, at the end of the day, we're just fans. We're not saying that we're experts or anything like that. The whole point of this is really we're just learning as we go. And I think that's what's fun about it. Is I always thought I knew quite a bit about film, but I'm always learning more. But I don't think I'm an expert or I'm here to dictate to anything like that. And people talk about like whether they're I mean I get it. If you watch the show, that's great. I don't think that people watch our show are fans. They're just interested, and that's cool. So that's the other thing. I think some people, and then this is not a way they're like, oh, this is just you're saying it's great that you're not successful. That's not it. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal to me to like have to be so worried about what everybody thinks on YouTube.
Exactly.
To be so worried about view count and be so worried about content. Like, of course, yeah, I feel really bad about the last few months. We want to be more productive than that, but at the end of the day, we're doing this because it's fun and we enjoy ourselves and we like to learn things and we like to have people get involved and comment and stuff like that. So that's basically my pitch for the show. So if you subscribed for whatever reason, I don't know, it seems like we added a lot. I hope, I don't know. I hope you'll stick around because we have lots of plans coming up. And I know that we just came off a huge hiatus, but that's not going to happen again, at least for a while. We're going to do our best to get some consistency going. So we thank you so much for anybody that's, whether you're just watching the first time now live or sometime later, or you've been with us for years, that's even better. That's great. But yeah, that's the only time, we're not here to promote ourselves or anything like that. I mean, it's so annoying. I'll watch a channel that has like hundreds of thousands of subscribers and they get hundreds of thousands of views, and you're still just like, they're like, comment, like, and subscribe, click that button. I'm just like, oh, it's just annoying, man. I mean, I get it. It's not a big deal to click a button, but I just feel like such an idiot saying that all the time. So if you watch, that's great. We really appreciate it. But
exactly.
No pressure.
We're as uncut, uncensored, unfiltered opinion as we can get on here. So yeah. And this is where we're at.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're new or anything like that, we welcome comments any kind. I don't know, you can tell us we're wrong if you want. Sometimes people do that.
Please do.
And as we said, like, that's the other thing about the show. Like, I try my best, like, to really do my research and be accurate, but we do make mistakes. I try to fact check us, but I just mean we're not infallible. We'll make mistakes, so it's okay if people want to point that out. Unless, I mean, nobody likes it when you're getting corrected over something really small and semantic, I guess. But you know what I mean. It's cool.
Yeah, cool. We all see when we go back and watch an older episode that shit, I was way off on that or something.
Yeah, there's definitely times I watch older episodes. Yeah, where I'm just like, I totally forgot to like mention this important thing and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's never going to be perfect, but we do our best. So anyway, that's gone too long, but thanks anyway. Just another thank you. So I just noticed we did seem to get a lot of new subscribers. So hopefully some of you are actually watching, because I mean, why else would you subscribe?
Well, thank you for that. We certainly appreciate it.
All right, we're going to see you guys again really soon. We're going to keep this consistency going. 2 weeks in a row. It's going to be 3. I swear, one way or another. So, we're not sure what the topic is just yet. And once again, I will say that Werner Herzog is not forgotten. He is still there. So that will be
We love you,
revived.
Werner.
We love you, Werner. All right. Thanks
Thank
a lot, guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you really soon. Bye, Jake.